I've got 5:30, so if, we will, but we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for being here this evening. My name, for those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, and I'm Superintendent Jason Sternberger. This is our high school principal, Josh Faulkner. We have some board members here this evening, David Tillman in the back, Luke Lau, Christopher Choate, and Patrick Griffin. Dr. Matusik will be joining us shortly. And then from the career techs, we have Max Thomas from Chisholm Trail Technology Center, Superintendent, and Mandy Mayberry from Autry Technology Center, Director of Communications, Public Relations, and marketing. I left that one out, didn't I? So there's a couple of you, I think 6, 7, 8 of you that haven't been here. We've been having meetings, board meetings for the last 4 months where we've been talking about this and, taking our time going through the process. And it really goes back to, I think Patrick said they've done this for over the last 15, 20 years that he's been on the board, but it really started, and Mr. Thomas, feel free to, if I get information incorrectly here, but 3 or 4 years ago, Mr. Thomas was superintendent at Chisholm Trail, and Dr. Woods had a great agreement to benefit the kids at Hennessey Schools and being able to serve them at Chisholm Trail Technology Center at a very reduced rate. There's an out-of-tuition district cost that for Chisholm Trail is right around $18,000, I believe, and it was roughly about 10% of that. It was right around $1,900 a student that we were billed. So we've been sending 30, 40 kids the previous 3 years. This year it was 10 kids. We don't really know why. We had some transportation issues in the afternoon. But what's got us to this point is the way when that agreement was come about, it was, hey, we'll try it if it benefits the students of Hennessey. Then, discussion with the board and look to call an election resolution. Well, after the 1-year agreement, then we had a downturn in the economy. So Dr. Woods worked with Mr. Thomas and got an extension on that. And then the next year came COVID. And so, granted another extension. So we're at a point in 4 years, to be fair to the current sending schools at Chisholm Trail, we've got to do our part, and they can't afford to do that. I don't think that's any longer an option. Is that correct, Mr. Thomas?
It was a 2-year agreement, and then when the oil and gas industry plummeted, it was supposed to be voted on this past January, and Dr. Woods gave me a call and extended that, and the price that we gave was $1,000 a semester per student. So as you can tell, Autry and I, this is not a competition between us. We'll be tickled either direction you go. I think the most important thing, and then I'll be quiet, is you've got to have community support. And I think you've got to measure that first. If your community has not supported and you've not heard a lot about them, then you really got to take that into consideration, because the state board will vote to whether this election is called or not. And so they're going to ask you some really deep questions about, okay, what is your research? What's your survey show? Is your community behind all this before you call an election? And so, I think there's some things that probably need to be measured, on the board side, regardless of Autry and Chisholm Trail, because this is your community. We're a part of that, and we've enjoyed, our first 2 years we had 108 students that came through Chisholm Trail, and it dropped off considerably this year.
So with that, we really wanted to turn the floor over to the community members. And what questions did you have? We'll do our best to answer. That's the reason we've asked Autry and Chisholm Trail to be here as well. If there's something that we can't answer, if there's any new information that they have that maybe they wanted to present besides to what they had already presented to the board members. So really just open up the floor to anybody in here.
How are we paying for this right now?
Right now,
what kind of funds are you using to pay for these students?
Right now, mostly the Coca John Trust is paying for that.
And what is that per student?
Is it still $1,000 max?
$1,000 a semester.
$1,000 a semester.
So that trust is totally covering the tuition to go to VOTEC?
Currently, yes.
Have they discussed cutting that off, or as I understand, that's going to be a long-term fund to draw from?
They have not discussed cutting it off. I plan to go to the next board meeting. The last one they had was just to sell the house only, and so that wasn't on the agenda item. But they had mentioned, but nothing voted on, continuing doing something for career tech in some capacity for those students.
Okay, and as I understand it, this tax, if we were to go to Autry Tech and Enid, is $1.3 million coming out of the school district every year.
Well, it's currently, it's based on, that amount is based on what your district's net assessed valuation is. It is a permanent millage increase, and the Autry Technology Center is approximately 15, is that right? Hang on just a second.
15 mills and Chisholm.
15 mills, and theirs is 12 mills. Okay? So, based on what our valuation is, it would generate 1.3 for Autry and just a little over $1 million for Chisholm Trail at this time. If our valuation drops, then they get less money. If it goes up a bunch, they're gonna get more money, but it's a permanent millage rate.
How often does that increase as far as the millage? Because I know that you guys are capable, like, depending on how things end up, you guys could raise that millage. So when's the last time, do you guys know how often you guys have raised that?
For Autry Tech's district, 15 is the maximum, so there
Okay.
would be no chance to increase. Chisholm Trail's at 12.
We're 12, and we have no intentions to raise it to 15
Okay,
because we're financially sound at 12. And we will never run a bond issue because then we compete against tax dollars of this local district.
okay.
Mr. Sternberger, did I understand you correctly that the reduced rate at $1,000 per student that Hennessey School now has with Chisholm Trail would normally be how much per year?
18,000, right?
18?
Then it's 18,000, that is correct.
Is that regardless?
And that is not determined by Mr. Thomas, that's set at the state level.
Okay,
And every career tech is a little different. Autry
We're at
is
16,000.
16.
regardless of subject matter, or that it's that per 9-month school year?
For a full-time program, yes.
And it changes every year. It depends on how much a district spends per student, and that's how that money is calculated. So next year, it could flip. It could be substantially less, or it could be more. So if you buy more technology, more equipment, then you're probably going to have cost per student's going to go up. If you don't have to purchase a lot of things, your cost per student will go down. So give you a little idea of how it's calculated.
Does that total help in any industry or any adult students?
That is simply out-of-district rate for a full-time
Well,
student.
the total amount of money coming from from Hennessey, does that help any companies with training or adult students?
So I think there's some class to clarify. The number that you're asking about, sir, is an out-of-district rate for a full-time student. The other rate that Jesse's discussing would be that investment from the community to be an in-district school. And if you were an in-district school at either tech center, you would have business and industry training, your adult students could attend at reduced rates, you would have scholarships for recent graduates. There is a lot more that comes with that of being in district to any tech center. But the number, that 16,000 or that 18,000, that is simply just a flat rate for an out-of-district student only. If there's a company in town that wanted to do training or had safety training that they needed, there would be an additional charge to that company at an out-of-district rate. And for us, it's about double what a regular rate would be. Is yours similar?
That's correct, it's double, and to clarify that, we're talking about terminology, when you're talking about out-of-district, whether it's 16 or 18, that's for high school students only, that is not for adults.
What is what we were talking about, the 16,000 and the 19,000 for the out-of-district rate? What is the in-district? I mean, I know we're talking about the millage, but if we break it down to a per student, what is it per student if we are in district at each one of your career techs?
So when you're talking in-district high school student,
Yes, that's what
a
I'm
junior
referring
and senior, tuition free, books and supplies free, certification exam that they take every year.
But it's based upon is it not based upon, I mean, what it would cost to put this student through at all? I mean, because the sheet that the spreadsheet that was provided to us had total
Yes.
expenditures for regular programs,
Yes.
all the way through local costs per FTE student and whatnot. I mean, if we go in district, the only way that we can pay for this is with tax dollars.
For in-district.
We can't pay a per student rate. Like we're paying the $1,000 per semester for Chisholm Trail right now. The school can find a way to do that, especially through the Coco John Trust. If it gets bumped up to, well, obviously with that agreement ending, if we stayed out of district, it would be $16,000 per student or $19,000. The school's not going to be able to afford to do that. The Coco John Trust is not, cannot do that. But if there was a per student rate that is greatly reduced, if it is half of that, say $8,000, and the Coco John Trust is willing to still go $1,000, But you're saying that there's no way to break it down on a per student basis, even if we're in district.
No,
That's only done out of district. So the only way that we can pay this is for the taxpayers to pay for a kid to go, not the kid's parents or the school.
They can pay the out of
They can
district.
take the out of district, the parents. I've had that happen.
No, but if we're in district, I'm saying. Right. If we're in district, it's taxpayer only.
That's correct.
Yes, yes. There's no cost other than the taxpayer.
So to
There's great
clarify,
cost. There's enormous cost. There's outrageous cost. To say that there's no cost, for us that own land, own homes, own businesses, to pay for other kids to go to career tech, which I think is a tremendous thing. And we have a large number of students in Hennessey Schools that will greatly benefit from that, from this, no question. But that is an enormous expense for the people that own businesses, own homes, own lands to fork over.
I think looking at it in a little different way is there is a lot of value. As you just said, if a student comes to us and gets training, whether they're a high school student or a recent graduate, it is an investment from your all's community to have these resources accessible from individuals in your community. So it's an investment for companies that are growing in your community. It's an investment for entrepreneurs that want to open a business in your community. It's an investment for these high school students. It's an investment for recent graduates. At Autry Tech, recent graduates, 13th year, 14th year, 15th year, another benefit of being in district is they also can attend tuition free. We know a lot of times kids go to college and realize that's not the plan for them, and they come home and what am I gonna do? We're able to provide that scholarship. So yes, it is an investment, but there's value there. There's value for your students and the companies. But as Max said earlier, it's gonna take the community to work together to see that.
So like, is any of the money, so if we do pass it and decide to go in district, is any of the money that you guys receive directly from Hennessey, is any of that reinvested back into our school or our community, as far as like, do you guys do like some type of sponsorship or anything like that? Does any of that happen?
I can speak on behalf of Autry Tech, but I know Chisholm Trail is similar, so I don't want to speak on behalf of Max, but we absolutely make investments in our partner schools. At Autry Tech, we have 10 partner schools. If they need a speaker for whatever career day, we've made that investment for them. If they need sponsorships for activities or programs, we work with them on that partnership of what we can do. There's a variety of different ways, and that I speak on that because that's what I do. So if those school districts call and for us, Garber needs something and Enid Public needs something else, we just talk through that of what that looks like. But every district's different. Every K-12 school's different. But for me, we do a ton of investment in career programs, and I would say that would be the first value you would see.
We just purchased some technology for Watauga Public Schools that's for their STEM program as they're trying for a bond issue. And so at Dover, we partner, of course, I'm over both school districts, so we partner with IT, several other programs, finance lady does the treasurer, is also at Chisholm Trail, and so we share a lot of the same duties.
And do you guys know how many out-of-district students you have enrolled currently, like, to get an idea of how many spots?
For us, it's minimal. At Autry Tech, we take returning students enrollment first. So that happens in January. Then we go to our 10 partner schools, and those high school students are placed. Then after spring break, our adult students are placed, and then in the summer is when out of district gets that opportunity. So we fill all of our programs with in-district students first. So it is a minimal number. For us, we have 800 vacancies in our full-time programs. We have 25 full-time programs. Right now, we have 630 spots filled. So if we did enrollment today to fill programs right now, we have 170 spots over those 25 programs. Max's number than
Yeah,
ours.
yeah, we're a little bit different. We've serviced a lot of Hennessey students as adults, especially in our nursing program or health careers program, to be able to help with the nursing home here.
And when do you guys start enrollment? Because I know like if we decide to go to district, the vote will be June. Will the majority of the spots already be filled up, or how will that work? Like when do you guys start taking enrollment for?
We're taking enrollment right now.
We are too.
So the majority is probably going to be filled up as far as if it's not passed till June.
For us, as I mentioned, we have 800 vacancies. They'll actually increase this year because we added 6 new programs last year, so we'll be closer to 840. We currently have 630 students. So that's nearly 200 spots that your students could fill. It's a lot of students.
I know this isn't a school board meeting, but I would like to ask the members of the board to consider something. I feel like that we as patrons of the district have a responsibility for public education, or pre-K through 12th grade. And this sort of reminds me of what we've seen on a lot of national news over the past 3 or 4 years about education ought to be free. And somebody is paying for free education. And I would like to see Hennessey continue to educate our students up through the 12th grade, to help our students on a career path. However, I feel like we are looking at enormous costs with this program, with ad valorem taxes, to benefit who knows how many students. I mean, we may have 10 one year, we may have 30 the next, but I just feel like the program is too expensive for the return.
I think for me, for the community in order to try and gain some community support, if this is what we decide is, or think that is best for our students, to provide them opportunities, since majority of students or a lot of students aren't going to college or may come back from college and decide that they can't get a job in the career that they went for, is the benefits that go to the community. How much, as an in-district for an adult that doesn't, or a student that comes back from college and has exceeded that 13th, 14th, 15th year, what is the cost per adult for them to go, tuition-wise?
It's at a really reduced rate. I think it's out of balance, but it's the way the state has set this up, because you can have, you can go for $2 an hour. And so if it's $2 per credit hour, and it's a 600-hour program, which it's a full-time program, that's $1,200. And so each student's paying $1,200 versus what they would be paying as a high school student. So it's really, that's a great question, because it's really out of balance, and I've always thought, why don't they just go after high school if they can get in? I mean,
so this year right now, for an adult student, for a community that's in district, what is it per hour for them right now this year?
Okay, if you look at $2 an hour, and it's a 600-hour program, it's
Yeah.
$1,200 in district, and it's
Is that what it is this year?
$2,400 for out of
Is it
district.
$2 an hour this year?
Yeah, and it doubles for out of district. So
Doubles. And the program hours do vary a bit, so
Yeah.
there is,
The-
not every single program has the exact same hours.
So a $2,400 out-of-district program for an adult, but it's $18,000 for a high school student?
mhm. Yeah, and
Wow.
it's, I've always thought it was out of balance, but, it's the way they've set it up, it's been that way. I don't see it change.
I think part of the key there too is you run a risk with being out of district and adult. You're one of the last
That's right.
To
Be very
get a
loud.
position or to get a
That's
spot in a program of your choice.
Is there a breakdown as to what it'll cost a household? Because I keep hearing the word enormous or large $1 million. Well, that's not gonna
I
cost every
figured it
single
on my
person.
house.
I mean, that's
which
good,
is-
but I keep hearing the word enormous. But, I mean, is there a way to break it down per household? Is that somewhere?
Well, I mean, you've talked about, what is the property tax percentage increase?
So, I mean, Hennessey taxpayers are currently levied at 77 mills on your county formula, your county general, school, and everything. So at that 77 mills, if you add 12 mills from Chisholm Trail to it, that takes you to 89.51, or a tax increase of 15.7. Okay, so for every $1,000 of property tax you're paying, you're gonna have a $157 increase. If you add the 19 mil, and it's a little different, because each part of the county, of Garfield, Major, and Kingfisher are all different for Autry Tech, that's just the way it was set up, but it's around 19. So if you add that 19 into the 77, the 15 mils into the 77, that brings you to 92, so that's where theirs is a 19% tax increase, so basically $190 for every 1,000 that you're
I think
currently
that's the
paying.
simplest way to look at it, for,
I mean,
whatever your
it
property
changes the
tax
bill,
bill
right?
is, that we just got through paying, what is
Yeah.
15% or 19%?
Chisholm Trail, you're gonna add the 12.15 to it, and if it's Autry, you're gonna add 15.3 to it.
If I could correct, sorry about that, but districts now, if they join, you don't have to pay personal property, so it's 12 and 15. It's not, like when Dover joined, it was 12 mills, it wasn't 12.15 or 12.35. The
Just
districts that
one of them.
joined, when they joined back in 1990, okay, then at that point, they did personal property, and so personal property was on there, so it's 12.35 or 12.51.
Now it's just rounded.
Yeah,
Thank you.
now they did away with the personal property, so if any districts that joined, there's no more personal property.
So we need
taxes.
strictly 12 for,
12 and 15.
and 15, okay, so I'll rerun the numbers on the actual percentage.
But you're saying a
But
12%
it's still gonna be
increase or a
roughly
15%
rounded.
increase?
Thank you for
Okay.
pointing that out, Mr.
Okay.
Thomas, I was not aware of that.
Do you have an average of the last 5 years of how many students Hennessey has sent? during-
I have the last 4. Maybe.
We're in our third year. We're in the third year. The first 2 years, it was 108 students at Chisholm Trail, high school students,
From Hennessey,
from Hennessey.
each year?
No, the 2 years total,
Where was that?
average of 54.
Do we have any?
Was that current high school students, like under 18 or?
That was just high school students only.
That's where we were at the last 4 years. 10 this year, 30 last year, 43 2 years ago, and 32.
Is
That
there any
came from Miss Murray.
business trained numbers anywhere? Business employees trained or, opening jobs or entrepreneur type stuff? I mean, is that anywhere? From Autry to Hennessey or Chisholm Trail to Hennessey, like, has there been any businesses do training at Autry or at Chisholm Trail to show how that has been used as well?
Yeah.
Not just the high school students.
I don't have
Who
out of
was the
district.
lady that brought with Bill, the company?
Yeah,
EMS,
she's hired our welding students at
Okay.
Energy
Okay.
Meters. Is that correct?
But yeah, that's a business service that they
Yeah.
provided, that, yeah.
I think that question, Jesse's asking that question because we're talking a lot about high school students and the investment. That's one of the 5 areas. We serve the adult students, we serve the companies, we work
And I
with
can
job
get you this
placement,
printout.
and we also have
Okay, I'll get you a
facilities.
printout of it.
Have we sent anybody to Autry for firefighter 1 in the last few years?
Yes,
We have.
I'd have to pull those
Okay, well, that would
numbers.
be a number
That
that,
would be an
if we're in
out-of-district
district, firefighter 1 would be half.
Half.
No,
No, that's not. how it
no,
works.
we pay an annual fee of $500 to send our recruits up there, and then
For that program
we get in-district rate. We pay a
Is that
$500
sponsored
flat
through
fee, then we get in-district rate. And, but part of the reason is that firefighter money helped build a training facility up there. So it's not just a Autry Tech.
So that was a negotiated, thing
Correct.
between Autry Tech and the town of
Years
Hennessey?
ago. Well, that was, yes.
Yeah, that's
But
for the training.
district-wide, area-wide, whatever, the fire training programs up there were built. James, do you remember who had, I don't know if it was the OSFA or, but there was some input, some state money put into that.
I think you're right on
benefit
that.
all of the fire departments in the
And I knew that that was a specific program that Autry, Chisholm Trail doesn't do firefighter one, okay, but that Autry had, that we had adult community members going to, so I was trying to use
Yes,
that
we
as an
did.
example.
If
but
you used a different training program that didn't have the special agreement, that yes, it would be double.
It's half of what.
Yes.
It's never been a burden on us to educate that firefighter one.
How long was that agreement for? Was it just a perpetual forever and ever, or was there?
We
an
renew it
expiration
every year. To be honest with you, I can't answer if there's a time out there that they're gonna say, no, we're not gonna do that anymore. But it's been something we've just done every year.
And there's the option to go to OSU and get the same training if Autry doesn't work in their schedule.
Exactly.
It's a week-long or 2-week-long thing. Autry allows them to go in the evenings, but if they will take their vacation time, we'll send them to Stillwater, and they'll complete it within a week, 10 days, so.
I think there's some fees though, with that going through OSU, FSD. Sometimes on the Firefighter One Academy and Firefighter Two, there's some fees. It's not always free.
Oh, no.
Is that
No,
right?
we pay a fee,
Yeah.
but it's not a big fee.
Nothing's free.
It doesn't affect us on our budget. And we don't send them every year to Firefighter One, it's when we have a new group come on, and that's when we rotate out, which we don't rotate out guys that often. So, every 3 or 4 years when they send somebody.
Do you have the number of how many kids that we sent got their certification? Like how many so far, have any of them actually completed the program and got certified? And what they were
The
doing?
programs out there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
at
they
Chisholm
will have
Trail.
those numbers. I don't have them now, but I can get those and have them available.
Yeah.
Yeah, they presented them whenever they talked, they did present those.
That's one thing in the career tech system in Oklahoma. We track completers all across the state. So yes, we are accountable for those completers, and all tech centers across the state have a high percentage of completers.
Are the certification costs included in the tuition cost? Or is this on top of charge, or is it just covered through the career tech system?
Our career tech pays for the certification test.
Do any of the students pay a portion of this money, or is it all just taxpayer money?
The only thing that, in one of the areas, like cosmetology, okay, that's regulated by the State Board of Cosmetology, Barbering, Massage Therapy. They get a kit, and that kit might cost that student $500, and there's scholarship money that helps offset any of those costs for those students, but they get to keep it. So they might have a kit for $500 that they bought, but the value in that kit could be about $750 to $1,000. And so it's theirs. So it's, once they pay for it, they own it, they take home, you know, if they get their certification and passes the state boards, and that's regulated. We have two programs, a nursing program and the cosmetology program is regulated by the state board, not by the State Department of
But do any of the students have to pay anything to go to the VOTEC?
Tuition fees, books, parking.
No, it's all
Certification.
It's all
That's all
provided.
included.
Is there any incentive to make them stay and finish the course? Or how many do you have start that drop out?
We have very few, and that's probably one of the beauty things about kids maybe is really difficult. The education's been difficult, they've not enjoyed it. They go to career tech, and it's hands-on, and they love it. And a lot of times the discipline problems you might have at Hennessey High School goes away when those kids go to the technology center. And that's just not Chisholm Trail, that's Autry, that's the other 29 tech centers.
That's all.
We'll tell you the same thing. Kids that engage in that type of learning flourish.
The completion rate across the state is close to 90%. We've been as high as 97, around 90, and so, but like Max said, across the state at tech centers, that completion rate is very high. Completion rate would be measured by continuing on to a higher ed program, entering the military, or entering the workforce. So that is tracked by every student.
What's the percentage of high school student versus adult student in each school?
Well, our nursing program is adult, okay? And so you have a lot of them in health careers that's working on their CNA that come in just to test for 3 weeks. We focus on high school students, but we have adult programs and we love our adult population. There's times when if the student population falls off, then a lot of times the economy will dictate your adult population. So if there's a large population that needs to get retrained to get a job, they'll come to the tech center. But if there's a lot of jobs out there that's not being filled, then your adult population a lot of times will fall off.
For us, we have 25 full-time programs, and of those 25, 19 of them are accessible by high school students. The other ones are adult only. For us, we're about 50-50, 50% high school student, 50% adult. But I mentioned earlier that Autry scholarship, that 13th, 14th, 15th year, those 3 years after graduation, the majority of our adult students are on that Autry scholarship. So they're a young adult, a recent graduate.
What like common core classes do you guys offer? So I know like with our district being a lot of low income, a lot of them are on like Oklahoma Promise and all that stuff. So there's certain requirements for them to get in order to be eligible once they graduate with that. And then the second part of that question is a lot of the kids that are in athletics, their only option is in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have to take a core class and whatever they're going into, what does their day look like? Can they fit all of that in the morning?
Okay, we're probably a little different in this situation in Autry, is that we offer all levels of math. We cannot offer anything below algebra 1 or below. So it's got to be algebra 2, calculus, trig, AP. So we have an instructor that teaches the math courses. Also in our sciences, we have anatomy, physiology, so they pick up a science credit. They go back to their local high schools. You also have computer, the computer class that you need for high school credit. And so other than cosmetology, there's no room to come out of cosmetology to pick up any of your core classes, okay? But all the other programs, you can do that with. But cosmetology is state required, state hours, and so those kids have got to stay engaged. They can't miss much to be able to graduate in 2 years because they're half a day. Other students, welding student can go take anatomy and physiology. They can go take algebra 2 or 2 math classes. They can be in 2 core classes and be in that technical class 1 hour.
For us, we just have math classes available. So you ask, what does a day look like? They come half day, they go back to the high school the other half of the day, but they'll be in welding or any of those programs that we've mentioned. And when it's time to go to math class, they'll go to math class, get their math taken care of, and then go back. And it is to help with that scheduling, that you may only offer math at one certain hour and that student may miss it. So for
Is
us,
that
we
1
just,
hour that they would be hands-on, regardless of program, is that sufficient enough in those 2 years that those students are going to be in the program?
Well, a lot of times
To complete
it depends on how
a
motivated that
certification.
student is. If that student's motivated, like in our welding program, when they walk in, they don't come out of their little cubby hole. They're working from the time they start. So they're getting 3 Gs passed by Christmas, and they're a first-year student.
And what is that time? 8 in the morning to 11?
It
So they're
differs.
3 hours, 3 or 4 hours?
probably
in
about
those
3
programs?
hours.
So those that pull out to go to math, they're going 3 hours and the others are going 4 hours?
No, everybody's going 3 hours. They're going math 1 hour, because our math is embedded in our pre-engineering program. So they're in there with our pre-engineering students, taking also their math courses, everywhere it might be. And so they're going to be there 3 hours. So if they take anatomy, physiology, and they take an upper level math class, then they're only in their technical program 1 hour. So say if it's in welding, they're in there 1 hour. They possibly can get certification depending on how hard they work. And then when they test them every semester.
Okay, so it's not that and in addition, it's
No.
you're taking out of the program that kind of what you were leading
This
to.
has changed since I've been in the tech center 14 years. When I first came, there was no flexibility. When you're in that program, you didn't get out of it, okay? But they have really, it's really changed to be student-friendly, where students have the flexibility to come in and out of programs. It used to not be that way. And so it really handicaps students from needing some classes or couldn't come to a tech center because of that.
And that's what I'm afraid of, is there's gonna be so many kids that aren't able to go or have the option because of all their core classes that they need, or athletics. I mean, they're pretty limited to in the morning if they're in athletics.
Do you guys know if there's a lot of students that haven't had the opportunity because of core classes in these last few years?
The only thing I can tell you for sure is that I don't think there has been in the past. The only limitation this year that I've been aware of at all was a transportation issue. It was never about scheduling. It was never a scheduling problem. So,
What about students involved in?
what do you mean? Like, are they able to attend the career tech and stuff? They are given that opportunity, yes.
What's the age on this? Are they allowed to start at freshmen?
Junior and senior.
Juniors and seniors.
Unless they're if they're in pre-engineering, they can start as a sophomore.
And we don't have that program. We are juniors and seniors. We've embedded some programs at different partner schools that have been available as needed sophomore year or different years, but right now we don't have any of those.
IEPs are a legal document, and so if an IEP team make a decision that that child needs to be in a program as a sophomore, then they would be eligible to come through their IEP.
Is there testing that the students take to qualify for programs? And does that test depend on if they get in or not, depending on if they're in a district?
We don't test.
You don't test?
We do have placement exams, but we actually use a rubric. And so our counselors take a look at a variety of different areas to place the student. They'll answer a couple of questions. They'll work with the high school counselor to help place that students, trying to make that placement as fair as possible across the board. Like I mentioned, we have 10 partner schools. So just because one partner school may do enrollment this first week of February, the other partner school may not get their enrollment done until the last week of February. We would want to make sure that that placement was as fair as possible, and so that's why they started that rubric process.
Do you have a plan that if this does not pass, how are we going to send our students to VOTEC?
So that would be something we'd have to talk to the board to see if we're gonna budget so much money. Obviously, talk with the foundation on the Coker John Trust to see if they would set aside so much and determine our budget and how many we'd be able to send.
Well, you know, 1 million or 1.3 million is a large sum, and it is coming out of our school district every year, not just for 5 years or 10 years like a bond. And so at your 10 students this year, that'd be $130,000 at Enid per student cost to the taxpayers. And you kind of maybe averaged 30 though for the last 5 years, so that's $43,000 per student. That's what I'm just concerned about. Is there some other way to fund this through the school, through the foundation, that it wouldn't put the burden on the taxpayers?
I want to say something. I agree with Mr. Matusik that it would cost $43,000 per student, but I also want people to look at it in a different light. Say we did have whatever kids go through our district, and it did cost $43,000 per kid to go through. Average that over their lifetime. What is it worth to that kid? What's it worth to our community? How many people have gone through these programs and stayed here and done something? Made a business.
I didn't say it was of no value.
No, I'm just saying people need to think about it bigger than what does it actually cost and what can it do as economic value for a community. We're building a community of people that know stuff. What's that worth? It's worth more than building a community of people that don't know anything.
Well, and we can't divide it just by the students. There are other benefits to that total cost as well, for businesses, for adult students.
But there's personal responsibility also to take upon yourself to further your education. We are supplying K through 12 right now. Those that go to college, we don't supplement them. If you go to VOTEC, I mean, it's a great course, and some people need to be at a VOTEC. But at what cost to the taxpayers?
Is there a way, I mean, I know that the numbers are much lower in the past year, and I know it's because I don't know what all the transportation issues are, but is there a way to like survey the students, you know, like through a Google?
We
you know?
have.
You have, okay.
Yeah.
Like this past year you have to see
We
what?
did just in the last few days, yes.
Okay,
So there was 151 responses, and this was done from 8th graders through juniors in high school. And there was 151 responses, and roughly 60% of those were saying yes, they are interested in career tech. I've even got a breakdown of different programs that are offered in there. Obviously, at Chisholm Trail, maybe not all of those would be offered, but so that's something, I mean, I can share, but I think if you look at the actual number, I think it was 87 students that were saying yes, they're interested in career tech moving forward. But
so
They're
do they get,
that are eligible? No.
Spring?
That just from eighth graders to juniors, so they wouldn't be eligible to go to career tech until they were a junior.
That's 80 out
Just
of- how many kids
just
total?
expressed a possible interest.
Out of 151 responses, but I can tell you that's not
not
the
the
total
kids.
population of our 8th grade to juniors. So out of those 151 though, like I said, it's 57.6%. That's why I said roughly 60. Yeah, Mr. Tillman.
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to take a look at themselves. Everybody's focused on the cost and how much is going to increase your taxes. And Mr. Sturmer and I had this conversation, I think it was before last month's meeting. How do you put a value on a student's education? If you're so focused on the amount of taxes you're going to pay, can you actually look yourself in the mirror or look at a child and say, my taxes are more important to me than sending a kid to a boat tech center, one that may come back and start a business here and hire local people?
What's
It's just something to look at yourself and say. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do you put an price
Do
on
we
someone's
have
education?
the percentage of students that have come back to Hennessey that have went through these programs? And
They do.
They do?
That was
Okay,
asked
could
for
we-
out here.
okay, could
They
we
they presented those to us at their meeting.
because that would be, because that's kind of what I'm hearing, is we want to see what the value is or what's coming back to our community. And so some of those numbers would be great to see.
What's the potential, sorry, Kate.
you're okay. Could we also do, I don't know, through maybe like All About It Hennessy or something? I know I personally looked into taking a class at Autry and the price was double. And it did turn me off to taking a class because, it's something I wanted to do personally and could advance my professional ambitions as well. But I didn't know how much I would use it. For the price that I was gonna pay out of district, it was not something I was gonna pursue. Anyways, I'm off tangent. Is there a way though that we could also put a survey out there through the community as far as, adults that maybe have had that same experience or do want to further any of like their ambitions that, if the cost has been, do they know what programs are? How do the kids find out, what programs are offered or how to go about doing this? Is there, I'm very new to all of this, so that's why
I think we're taking our students on a tour.
We were technically already supposed to have taken our students on a tour to Autry. It got rescheduled for Thursday this week, so it's looking like we might have to reschedule it again.
Mm-hmm.
But we've already taken them on a tour of Chisholm Trail, and that was just sophomores. This tour, we're taking sophomores and juniors, and we're taking the whole class, or both classes, taking 3 buses. So, from there, like that's those kinds of tours, and I believe there's been a lot of the time they would take 8th grade classes, and correct me if I'm wrong if somebody out here knows better than I do, but they would take the 8th grade class to a career tech. I think they said Meridian maybe in Stillwater rather than maybe Autry or Chisholm Trail, but they start trying to educate students on what career tech is from the time they're in 8th grade and so that they are aware of what their options are whenever they get to be a junior in high school. As far as the actual programs, that's what those tours are so good for, is you can, while you're there, you get to tour those programs and get a better look at what it would be like to be a student there.
So my son's a junior. I know he's gotten a list of traditional classes that have been available for these last couple of years. Just like if he wanted to sign up this year.
Yeah.
I'm sure that happens.
And we do share that. It's part of, I believe, because we're just now starting pre-enrollment for next year, so I'm pretty sure that's kind of part of that process. And we have a time where we those students that are interested, we talk with them about what is available to them and things like that. And mostly that I believe Mrs. Murray does that. I obviously will help that as well, but primarily that's something that she does, so.
If I may, I can elaborate a little bit on that. For our partner schools, all 10 of them, our career counselors go out and they have a career development plan. So that starts at the middle school age. They'll do interest inventories. This is the same resources that Chisholm Trail has access to, so we're very similar. But go out and they do interest inventories. What are you interested in? They'll come back out and do career day lessons and curriculum. Our 3 counselors are constantly in school. So as an in-district school, you would be included in that. As 8th graders, they come out into our programs. As you mentioned, you get to see that hands-on training, and they're selecting those programs. As sophomores, they come back out and they do that again. In the meantime, in between, we're going to parent meetings. Every district's different, but if they invite us out, our career counselors or myself, somebody comes out and talks about it. We also do adult career training. If there's a local community event, we do an event called Senior Showcase, so every senior in Garfield County is invited to be exposed to a company that's hiring and the type of training you need to work for those companies. Those would all be benefits of being in district that your students would have access to as well.
I believe all 8th graders will be on a career plan for the next 4 years. That's required by law.
When we were talking about the 40,000 per student, if a student starts as a junior, how many courses can they complete before they're done with that 15th year scholarship? If they go about it hardcore.
So at Autry, most of our programs, most of them, you're half a day for 2 years as a junior and senior to complete a program. We have a couple that you could do half a day for 1 year and complete. As an adult, if you are able to attend full-time, so you would have 3 years, if you attended full day, you could do 3 more programs. So for us, you could technically do 4, but by that time, we're wanting to make sure that you're finding an employment and we're connecting you. So it's pretty rare for an individual to do 4 whole programs. But you may see someone that goes into the construction field as a high school student. They do that half day for 2 years and they love it, but they want to start their own business and they have no idea how to do that. So as an adult, they'll come take the business program where they get accounting, they get that type of information to help them. So there's a variety of different combinations of skills, but most of our programs are half day and would take 2 years. Would yours be similar?
Yeah, very similar. One of the side notes on that, one of the problems sometimes with an adult, they will get into the adult program and they will complete one program, they're gaining financial aid, okay? They move to another program, they get financial aid, so it becomes a job to them. That's how they're getting revenue and income, but they never have any intentions of using any of those certifications.
I hope that's not a
What's that?
large number of people that are doing it, but.
So if you have a student that finishes the program, their junior, senior year, so they finish their senior year, and for your example, construction, and they want to start their own business, do they fall within that 13, 14, 15 years to come back and get that free tuition again for another program?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. Students ask that a lot of, what's my 15th year, but I've never gone to Autry. That's okay, you still can come back that 15th year and take advantage of that scholarship. Another really common route is the health profession. Come as a junior and senior, take health careers. I know you all have a similar program. Introduction to the health field, terminology. You can get a CNA certification, then you realize, okay, I want to be a rad tech. I want to be a surge tech. I want to take this and grow my career. And they could do one of our advanced medical programs. And if they're on that 13, 14 scholarship, they're still not paying tuition for that. So the health field, you have a lot of step 1, step 2, and moving on in your career.
We have a pre-nursing program through our health careers program, and so students can get 1/3 of their practical nursing completed while they're in high school. And so that's a huge savings with families.
What are the numbers look like for students that complete a program and actually enter that trade?
It's pretty high because we do follow-ups, that's required by the state. And so every year, we're contacting students that's graduated from our technology center and see if they're employable in the field that they got their certification in.
You're looking at around 90% as completers.
Now,
They
is
call
it-
that positively placed, if you ever see that somewhere, that's.
But it could be military or something like that too, so.
No, I understand the report. I have to do it myself. I'm a career tech, so I know that report. I guess, just from my personal experience and just knowing other teachers, other, students that went through that program, from my personal side, I don't know very many that went through a career tech program and are actually doing what they were trained to do.
So I'm not trying to rebuttal, but I have an accounting degree and I'm not doing accounting.
I have an animal science
You know,
degree and
I mean, it's kind of the
I'm
same
an ag
thing,
teacher.
right? So it's the way it is.
So I'm not really familiar with a lot of the programs, but do any of the programs offer, like where you go out into the community and you learn, like your field works? Like I did occupational therapy, so I had to go do field work.
Internships?
Yes.
Yes.
Job shadowing.
Okay, and so where do you send them? Would they go to, like if we joined one of your career techs, would you send them to Hennessey? Like through the nursing program, would they get to go to the nursing home or?
Yeah, it would be best if they were from Hennessey, they would get to do their internship here. In Kingfisher, if it's Pioneer Telephone, then they would go down to Pioneer Telephone and they would work. And they also get paid to be able to work during that internship, which is pretty nice.
Okay.
Every program's instructor, for us, has an advisory committee too.
They do.
They're common through the tech centers too. They build relationships with employers in the district. And so if Hennessey was to be a part of the district, they would continue to build those relationships to help place those students.
Okay.
So they do have the opportunity to come back to the community and actually work with someone in our community.
Absolutely.
As an internship.
Absolutely.
And I have another question too for the nurse. So just as an example for nursing, you said you complete about 1/3 of the program, right? To get your did you say pre-nursing or how does that work?
If you're in the health careers program and you're in a pre-nursing, because we have 4 RNs, then what they will do, they can complete 1/3 of the practical nursing program while they're in high school.
Gotcha. And then they would take the last year.
Then what they
Once
will
they
do is
graduate.
test. The more certifications, the CNA, the more certifications that they can gather while they're in high school, that gives them points when they take the test to get into the program.
The national test, right?
No, it's
Or just your
it's a
test?
local test, yeah.
Gotcha. Now, what happens if that student does those 3 years or finishes the 1/3 to get to that, but decides not to go to Autry for that last year, but wants to go somewhere else? Will that all transfer for them?
To another tech center?
To another tech center, or even to another nursing program at a university, or something like
That's
that?
probably gonna be case by case.
If it's in cosmetology, yes, it's transferable. Those hours that they put in
Okay.
is transferable to any tech center.
We're a little different. Our health careers program is half day for high school students and it's only 1 year half day. And while they're in that program, they can get their CNA certification. So it's a stepping stone also, it's just a little different at our tech center. We have 5 advanced medical adult only programs that all of our health students are exposed to and get to see what they do in there, and a high success rate of those high school students that enter those advanced medical programs. I don't have that number on the top of my head, but that is a priority.
You've lost me a little bit on the nursing program. Can they get a RN degree out of VOTEC?
The practical nursing.
Practical nursing.
To get an RN, they have to go on to another.
Yes, and there's bridge programs
Okay.
with some tech centers that 1 more year, then they can get their RN, but it's not a BSN.
But you can still work at a hospital as an LPN.
Yes, yes.
This next question is, I guess, for school board and administrators. Has there been any thought into how, if the taxpayers are going to spend this money, I mean, I guess you don't want them jumping down your throat either, but how are the students going to get held accountable to complete something if the taxpayers are paying for it? And the reason why I say that, and I'm just speaking from my personal experience, I have had several students that have left my program to go to VOTEC and end up coming back to me. One, they didn't want to get up that early in the morning. They didn't like their teachers. which that one's a popular one. Or two, they decided, hey, that's really not the direction I'm gonna go. Well, at that point, you take those students and the taxpayers are paying for that. So has there been any thought into how we can make sure or hold the kids accountable to complete something?
I don't think that's any different than holding kids accountable taking English right now, because the taxpayers are paying for that as well. And I can speak for Mr. Thomas and I's relationship when I was at Kingfisher. If a kid wasn't doing what they were supposed to out there, they notified the counselors and principals immediately. They worked with them, and if the kid wasn't going to do what was asked of them, they would come back and not be in the program.
Before
So
Epic,
we
there was never a
we had a great
choice.
working relationship on that part of it.
Yeah, before Epic charter schools came in, there was no choice, okay? Kids required to go to public school or they're sent to the DA's office, okay? With technology centers, that's by choice only.
But public school is a form of this as it is. Our tax dollars are going towards educating children from pre-K through 12th grade. There's no accountability. They're not forced to finish that degree. The amount of money that we put into all the resources in public school, into vocational programs, into athletic programs, and kids quit in the middle of the semester and stop playing basketball, and there's no accountability to that. So holding a kid, it's additional money sending them to another place to learn, but we got a lot of money that's being spent on public education they're not forced to finish grade 12 or to stay in athletic programs or vocational agricultural programs.
Are there any scholarships available for students going to VOTEC? Can they apply for scholarships to help offset the cost?
Here locally,
Anywhere?
I'm not aware of it like a state level scholarship. Locally we have the Cogajon that they can apply for, and so that would be something. But on a state level, I'm not aware of any. But everything would probably pretty much take place through a local foundation.
I mean, even like you were talking like the career path, I think, regardless if we join district or not, I think we definitely need to set our kids up on a career path, regardless. They maybe freshmen, they come in and they say what they're interested in, and then use the resources in the community. There's so many people in our community that maybe they could job shadow or do some type of internship their sophomore year, and then that would be an option, career tech or whatever. So instead of waiting until their junior year to get in a program, they would have some insight freshman and sophomore year.
We start doing that even in junior high. They're supposed to start doing that. It's required by law. I think it was happening before it was required by law, but now it's required by law. So we already do that and try to start exposing them to lots of different career paths. And that way, when they are a junior and that availability of career tech is awesome. Open for them, then they have a better idea. So we're not waiting until they're a junior to try to do that. We are doing it.
But are you talking just career day? Is that all you're?
No.
Criteria that we have to do. The things that they're talking about, like where we do interest inventories every year, we talk about all of the different things. Part of the stuff that we do, like during Eagle Advisory and stuff like that, that's all about trying to help them figure out which path they would like to take, and just exposing them to lots of different paths, because especially for students of small towns, they don't have a lot of worldview of different things that might be available to them. So we do that, like you said, starting in 8th grade is where it's mandated, but we've been doing that since I've been here.
And there's college-ready curriculum tracks that those that are planning on going to four-year university are on that curriculum path as opposed to the others.
But it's checked every year, right? It doesn't just stop, like you do an inventory every year,
Yes.
like through seniors,
Yes,
correct?
because their interests change.
That's what I was gonna say,
Yes.
because 8th grade to me, what
Oh
I've
yeah,
seen,
no, we do
that's too
it
early.
every year.
Yeah.
We just, as they get older, we start adding things like, not just, do you want to go to college, how are you going to pay for college, and what kind of things are out there, and how do you do a resume, and how do you, so we start adding in all of those other things that are age appropriate as they get a little bit older. but we always do interest inventories, we always,
And has Career Tech been a part of that conversation?
not, well, yes, as far as we do go to the career techs, the kids get to go, and they also have an opportunity, like, they get to go one time and look at the different things they have, and then if they pick out one or two, and then they get to go and job shadow that for an hour or two that day. And I think this year was a little bit different, because normally they got to go 2 hours, but now if they had two things that they wanted to look at, they got 30 minutes in one and 30 minutes in the other. But that does happen, as from what I understand, because we have to help them sign up and things like that. But they also offer internships. We've had students that did internships with our physical trainer before and things like that. I've had students who have done that, so.
Cool.
I mean, I don't personally talk to the career techs, but I know that they're part
That's
of
what I'm just saying, they're
yeah.
getting exposed. And
Yes,
like
absolutely.
multiple times, because
Yes.
that would be my other concern.
Well, I think if we were in district, we would have the opportunity to to expose them even more, because they will come in and do
That's
things.
what I was,
Yes, that they don't maybe currently do since we're not in district, but we are still exposing them. They're still willing to work with us and stuff like that, but it'd just probably be better if we were in district. It would work
There's an
better.
entire career curriculum for Audrey for a 6th through 12th grader that all in-district students receive, and we're not providing that to out-of-district schools.
Are the high school students still allowed to do internships?
Yes.
What year do they get to start doing that?
I believe internships are their junior year. I think work permit is senior year, but internships their junior year.
So I'm sorry, we were a little late, but I'm just trying to understand the scholarship side of things. So we keep talking about taxpayer dollar monies, and then we're talking about scholarships. So the school, let's say we do taxpayer dollars, all of that, so the school is gonna help send that student to Career Tech. But then is there an additional cost, which is why they need another scholarship? Or are we calling these taxpayer dollars scholarships? What does that mean?
The scholarships you're referring to through your foundation are for out-of-district
Yeah, they're
students.
for out-of-district expense that we're currently paying,
Okay,
that we're currently paying $1,000 a student
okay.
this semester.
But the
So-
actual out-of-district cost is about $16,000 and about $18,000 for our different tech centers. And that was the formula that comes from the State Department, and there's a.
Okay, so when we have a student that wants to go to a Career Tech, or go do a program, junior and senior year, we have this money set aside for them to do that, and then they quit midway, that just goes back into, I'm just trying to understand how it works.
They bill us at the end of each semester.
Even if that student quits midway
We
through?
haven't had a student quit. I'm not sure what would happen.
That's why I'm just curious, because
I
if
would
the
think
student
if he was
decides not
there,
to do it
They
after,
would probably, services provided, and he didn't fulfill his duty, he would still have to pay.
you would still have to.
But, yeah,
Alright,
that would be my assumption, if he quit the first week, they're
That's-
probably gonna
that's
say,
why I
no,
was
he didn't
asking.
realize he didn't like it, he went on.
so
but
we would pay,
kicks out
so
the-
basically you would pay a full year, or for that whole program?
It's by the semester, is
Or per
is what we got
semester.
billed, yeah.
Okay.
But from my understanding, if we were an in-district school, we could send 80 kids to Career Tech if we had 80 kids interested. And the amount of tax money that we're paying would not change. So the number of students we could send, I mean, truthfully, we could send the whole high school if everyone was interested, but
You want your mornings off, Josh?
no. But technically though, I'm sure.
So that does not, so it's
That
not
shouldn't
like-
fluctuate no matter how many students go to Career Tech. But there is there is a possibility, there may be up years and down years, like, this year we only have 10, which was more of a transportation issue, but there may be a year that we have 60, so it could fluctuate, and hopefully it won't fluctuate that big, but, but that was my understanding. Is that correct? That if we're paying the in-district, or if we're in district and that tax increase happens, no matter how many students we send, that is like
Yeah,
a
probably
fixed.
so.
So we
Fixed.
just pay one flat rate, basically.
Basically.
If you're an in-district school,
Taxpayer.
and that's that millage tax rate. See, like right now, we have 10 going, and we're very fortunate in Kingfisher County with all the gross production, that all the schools are pretty healthy. We could pay for that out of general fund this year. but we all know that gross production is gonna slowly trend away. We can't pay for 10, we couldn't have done that probably 10 years ago, of looking at that many, let alone 30. So, and, like I said, I have not had a chance to visit with the board of the Coca-Cola Trust to see where and how much they'd be able to allow. If it come back to the board, my recommendation was you just set a flat budget that you feel like you could live with, kind of like hiring 4 teachers or whatever it may be. We're just gonna allocate 200,000, that's just an arbitrary number that we'd never even discussed. I'm just throwing that out there, knowing you're gonna have 10 apply, that's all we can provide for. So, that's something we would have to consider
If we
and
stay
figure
out
out,
of
if we stay out of, and we'd have to figure out what that arbitrary number is gonna be. And then all of a sudden, if gross production completely dries up from state aid and everything else, we may not send a kid down the road.
Or if you have 40 or 50 kids want to go, you can't.
There'd be a limit, there'd be an application process, and then, so somebody's gonna get left out. So those are all the things you've gotta consider if we're not an in-district school.
Speaking of the transportation issue, if we are in district, is transportation of the Hennessey students to and from Autry, to and from Chisholm Trail,
It's
is it
our
our
responsibility.
responsibility?
It's our responsibility.
You send the bus, you provide the drivers?
Correct.
We're different. We reimburse the district, you provide the transportation, but we pay you
Okay,
per student, per mile.
but yours,
We provide a bus and a driver.
and it is also okay for the students to get themselves there.
That's
Yes,
correct.
that is correct.
That's up on district policy. Some have different policies.
How many students actually ride the bus? Because I know I have several former students that left my program to go to VOTEC that drove themselves. And the reason why I know that is because I would pass them on the road.
This year, they all ride the bus.
I know the first couple of years, my kids both rode together sometimes and drove themselves just because the bus was full. And my son had a driver's license, so they chose to ride together to VOTEC. And that's mainly, like I said, because the bus was full and they didn't have room for them, so. I think it was one of the smaller buses, because they paired up with Dover, to ride with Dover, go down there and pick the students up.
With 10, we just felt like it's a safety issue.
I'm trying to remember when, October, November, when both schools came and visited with us, with the board. If I remember correctly, I think one of you said that you partnered with each other. So if we're in district with Autry and a student there's a program where a scheduling issue where they may need a science class and Autry doesn't offer the science class that they need, that they can go to Chisholm Trail.
There's an alliance that we have through Northwest Oklahoma that allows students to, if they belong to a district and that district doesn't offer something, then the other district will accept them, but their in-district students have first priority, so they're on a waiting list.
We do reciprocate.
So would that go the same for like if a program was full? If the program was full at Autry and you had opening at Chisholm Trail, would they be able to go to that program? So say we join district with Autry and whatever program the student wants to go is full at Autry, but you have a vacancy, would they be able to take it at
Only
Chisholm
if
Trail?
there's seating available.
And so if there is seating available, what does the transportation look like at that point?
That would be up to the district, ever have what arrangement you guys have got would be responsible for that.
Okay, so there's not a
Because-
policy, there's
because
not a policy.
we're not receiving any tax dollars, but we're educating those students.
So I guess my question is there any policies that dictate what a school district does in that case? I'm not saying that's gonna be the case, like Mrs. Seeger has stated. But if it is the case, is there a policy that requires the school district to get that child or student, to that VOTEC?
I'm not aware one requires, that would be the local discretion if we want to provide or work that out with parents, but I'm not.
I didn't know what the,
I would require.
Yeah, it would be a local decision.
It would be,
Yeah, it'd be a local decision with the families.
Kind of like what we do with.
I could just
current bus
see, a
drivers.
case where if there's one student, are we, as a school district, are we gonna run a bus
For one kid.
for one student if we're required to do it? We need to know that.
Yeah. If we'd have an option working something with parents where you could look at paying mileage reimbursement, then take his own car or something like that. You'd have 2 or 3 options to choose from.
But the school district would be responsible for that mileage?
I don't think so.
So there's not a transportation requirement? If we
No.
join, if we join, you know.
Not to,
you're gonna come-
not to the reciprocating school.
Right, oh, yeah.
Yeah, not to the reciprocating school.
But, okay, non-reciprocating, if we join, is there a transportation requirement?
Well, I mean, they
Provide, I understand that, Autry does not. but-
We reimburse.
yeah.
Now, in this instance, if you guys were full and Chisholm Trail had a slot open that they could take, and the school provided, if it was one student, two students, provided, say, Suburban or something, somebody to drive them down there, or their own vehicle, would Autry still reimburse the school for the cost?
I'd have to check on that. I mean, I
Because
want to
they're
say
choosing-
no.
They're having to go to the Chisholm Trail to
Yeah.
get that program they want, that you guys are
How
full.
many current students do you guys handle in this reciprocating agreement? How many?
Very few that happens to.
Now, we are in a different, I mean, we're right in the middle of two schools that have two different offerings, so it could happen pretty likely here compared to other places too.
We have 25 full-time programs. We're in City of Enid limits, so our program offering is different than what Chisholm Trail is. And so sometimes you'll see adult students that want to take our advanced medical programs that we do reciprocate, but it is still minimal. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I could look into it if you'd like me to.
Just out of curiosity, we've heard what it costs to send a student to VOTEC. What's the cost per student to educate them K through 12 here?
I think the average expenditure is around $7,000-8,000 on the last report that came out.
Per year?
That's pretty consistent, yeah. It may be a little higher than that, maybe a little lower, but it's usually right in that range.
That's in district, I mean, that's for your local kids that are here up in
Yeah.
Aurora.
Yeah, when you figure out all the revenue and, yeah. And actually Kingfisher County, Bird, it kind of looks bad for Kingfisher County.
Right.
Kingfisher County is a little skewed right now because our revenues are so high. And so it looks like we're not spending all that we're taking in that we could on them, so it's a little off.
Those students are not taken out of the formula if they do go to VOTEC.
Absolutely not. Their funding is completely different. They don't try to recruit your kids so they can get more money by any means. And so it's, yeah, they have no incentive to do that.
In other words, we don't receive less money.
Absolutely not.
Baseball.
Yeah, their funding is independent of that student count.
In the state of Oklahoma, you have 3 separate systems. Higher ed is separate, K-12 is separate, and career tech is separate, and the funding source is different for all 3.
Are all the programs first come, first serve, or is it everyone applies and then is there like a process of maybe you guys look at like GPA, or how does that work?
We have a rubric system at Autry. I'm not sure what you guys.
Yeah, we take applications and fill the programs.
And then you fill them according to, what is your criteria? Do you?
We've not cut anybody out, even though we had, prior to COVID, our programs were full, okay? When COVID hit, and we probably lost a lot of students maybe to EPIC, or they stayed home, or some other form of education. I think they even said the student population in public schools or career tech, it really dipped. Because we lost a lot of students that went virtual, that were in the career tech. A lot of things changed during COVID years.
Our in-district high school students get first priority.
That was what I was gonna ask. So making sure that if we have that many kids that signed up, that they're gonna actually get a seat.
High school
Before-
students are all go through the same rubric process.
Okay.
So attendance and all that's evaluated.
My other question too, because we were thinking about transportation, how students get there and whatnot, but what time do they leave in the morning to go to the tech center? Like what time does the bus pick them up?
7:30.
Okay, so those ones that may need breakfast,
Now at Dover,
Just-
they can
just
come in and
curious.
get their breakfast before they get on the bus.
okay, that's what I
Okay.
wanted. Does Hennessey do that early at
The
7:30?
bus leaves at 7:15 from here, so No.
Does Hennessy,
They don't
okay, I was gonna say, does Hennessy provide, that might be. another
Kingfisher
thing.
Kingfisher 7:40, so those kids, if they come at 7:30 or 7:35, they can eat their breakfast.
They
and
eat
get
their
to
breakfast, so that might be something they have to, I mean, if those kids need, I mean, and then what time do they get back? Do they make it back in time for the lunch hour?
Our
Yes.
high school students leave at 10:45.
Ours are back for the lunch hour every day.
I might have missed I came in late, so I might have missed part of the discussion, but whenever Autry Tech came the first time, I asked a question whether you had some numbers on positive placement. I know you threw out the number of 90%, but I'm talking about high school students alone, so when they graduate, what is that positive placement, or have you had time to look at that, what positive placement looks like for a senior who is completing their certification through your program?
I sent those numbers, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was, but it was higher than the high school student placement was higher.
In a job, or?
Our positive placement consists of higher ed, continuing on to higher ed, military, or placement in a career.
Placement in a career.
And our high school placement was higher on its own than it was with our high school and adults combined. Not much, but a couple percentage points. It was in the high 90s.
Has Chisholm Trail done a study like that to know what your placement
My
is?
counselor has that information.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had her here in October.
Yeah, I understand.
Mandy, what all do you have right there? Just so, I don't know.
So I brought some information that highlights, I know we've talked a lot about high school students today, but the other areas that Career Tech serves communities is through corporate training with business and industry services, entrepreneur services. So I brought material like that you all could see if you were interested in, but most of our questions today have been in regards to high school students, but you are welcome to take these or ask us any questions.
This might have been answered, we walked in late, but those certifications that those kids walk out with, do you guys work with any industry partners to help them get placement after high school?
That's very important to all career techs. That's not just isolating career tech. All career techs has, what they do, they have an advisory team of industry, and so that's how they play. So if you're in health careers, they have an advisory team of all health careers, okay, whether it's Mercy Hospital, clinics, nursing homes, to be able to place those students, so.
Now, for them to get their certification, do they have to pay for that certification test at the end, or is that included in our?
At Autry, we cover that certification exam for high school students.
Is that just in district, or is that for out of district as well? Tuition
In
cost?
district.
In district, so out of district, on top of the tuition, then they'd have to pay for their certification
Depends on
test.
the class. Each class is different.
Students currently from Hennessey Public Schools at Chisholm Trail's paying for that certification test.
Yeah, I know, not both my kids went.
What is the average cost
What
of
was that? What's the
certification?
average cost?
Boy, that varies.
Varies.
Depends whether you're nursing or if you're in welding.
So what is nursing?
Oh, gosh. It's more expensive. Welding, God, I think if I said anything, I'd be lying to you on the exact number on that.
I bet I
But
can
they
find it.
they'll take a 3G, if they take a 4G while they're testing, and they continue working on their 5G, they might take 3 tests. They might just take 1 test. It kind of depends on their skill level and what they're ready for when they test.
Probably depends on your inspector too, coming to do the test
Yeah.
as well.
Now, I heard you mention earlier that if those kids want to continue on to higher ed after they complete a program there, have you had any issues with anything transferring in the state to those higher ed universities, or to those?
They're separate. They're separate. We have welding that has a feeder program to Cali County. And then OSU IT would be next step. It's more of like step 2 rather than
Gotcha.
this counts for that.
And what if they want to go outside the state?
There are some national certifications in some programs, but many of the certifications are going to be state certifications. I don't know who just asked it. You may have asked it about certifications, but how do we determine those? How much are they? Those advisory committees are coming in and telling us too what they're looking for.
What they want.
And
to see
so
in the
if
application.
this type of job has grown and they need to hire 60 in this area, we're gonna add that curriculum. And that isn't this school versus this school. That's the Oklahoma Career Tech system listening to business and industry. I mean, that's the ultimate purpose of the Oklahoma Career Tech system, is to build a qualified workforce. So we're
Yeah,
listening.
keep people in the state.
Yes.
Yeah, totally get it.
The Department
Through
of
the
Labor.
Department of Labor, yeah.
Is recruitment connected to community participation also? So if there's a business in Hennessey, and we don't participate, is that business considered to be equal to a business in Enid versus whether the community participates or not?
I don't know if I understand that question.
Well, if you're in district or out of district, if we're out of district and we have an industry here, would that business still be eligible to have all the pipeline, so to speak, for?
We've done that, and I'm sure Autry does the same thing. Well, I know they probably do. I know Northwest. This is called a white area. They don't belong to a technology center. And so technology, I don't know, Jesse, do you do any training here in Hennessey at all?
We do.
Okay, so that's an example. Chisholm Trail, if they're called up wanting to do some training, they will come and do some training here at Hennessey. Regardless if you're in district or out of district.
Right, and what about Autry?
Yes, Jesse's one of our trainers at Autry Tech.
We just charge double what we would charge if you're in
It's just the
district.
out-of-district training rate versus the in-district training rate.
Well, I'm actually talking about recruitment. So a company actually wants to, not the internships. I mean, I understand the internships could be a participating, but a company that wants to hire, they have a Hennessey, Oklahoma address, and Hennessey does not participate.
We do that right now with energy meters.
Okay, because I've experienced, and this is with Autry, I've experienced year after year after year going in and sitting down with the correct people to say, hey, we need employees, we need people. They get put on a list and get 0 calls. And Enid company after Enid company is like, hey, we recruit 25 people a year out of the program. And we recruit 0, 0, 0. And I'm talking like 18 years of it.
I can't speak on behalf of your situation, but it does sound like there may be a disconnect that we could look into to finding a solution.
So it would be to our benefit to recruit if we were participating as a community.
Your businesses in the community as in district, yes, will have more benefits.
Right. Okay.
I've had businesses in Hennessey asking me for instructors' name and contact info to get those students involved in jobs. I have connected them in that situation. So, I mean, at that point, it's on that instructor and that student to actually contact that company, wherever that company is. I feel like it's my job to give those students a job. I don't care where it is. I mean, I prefer it, you know, in the state of Oklahoma, obviously, but I really don't care where it is.
Right. Who are you?
I am a parent. I work in the business or work in the corporate training side of Autry Tech.
Okay. I'm just speaking from my experience and my efforts put forth, and you weren't around, trust me. This has been, we finally quit even bothering after we spent 12 years of it. You know, why keep going in and saying, hey, we need employees, we need employees. Yeah, we'll put you on a list. You know, and then I literally would talk to people that went through the program, and they're like, no, you were never on the list. We didn't know about you. But we were out of district. So I've always wondered, is that because we're out of district? Because Watonga or Chisholm Trail, we didn't experience the same thing. As soon as that program began, we start seeing people out of it.
Our job placement and job opportunities is all done online. And so, I can't speak to your situation, but it does sound like there's some disconnect, and maybe
Right.
there's some opportunity there to find solutions.
So does the industry person in our community reach out to you, or that's so for instance, your business, I'm sorry, I don't know you either, but your business, do you reach out to Autry Tech to get put on the list for recruitment? Or is that something that if we go into district or we become a part of Autry Tech and Chisholm Trail, that you guys will reach out to all the businesses within our area to put them on a list for our students to look at?
There'll be both. Those relationships will begin developing.
Okay.
So that could be,
So it'd have to be you, for instance.
It
you
would
have
be
to
both
outreach.
sides.
We always went there.
That's what I'm asking.
I mean,
right?
year
Do they
after year, we
recruit?
go
Does
sit
Autry
down
recruit
in
you
front of
guys?
somebody and say, hey, this is a problem, how do we address it?
right now, we are not going to out-of-district businesses.
Well, I know at the meeting that we had a couple of months ago, that Chisholm Trail, we had representative from Energy Meter right here, and obviously they're getting people from the program and have for several years from Chisholm Trail for, the welders and pipe fitters and things that they use. I'd like to, Carl, with your experience, I'd like to compare that to Energy Meter, because, I mean, they're getting employees.
Well, all instructors are different also, like.
Yeah,
you
different
mentioned,
programs.
Different instructors, different contacts. I never sat down with instructors, I always sat down with, I would go in the front door and they would introduce me to somebody behind a desk and they'd put me in the system, and they re-put me in the system and ask me questions and, it never equaled anything positive for us. But that's what I've always wondered, ever since then, I've always wondered, is it because we don't participate? Are we blocked out because we don't participate?
There are corporate training members that go out to the in-district businesses to ask training needs or employment needs or whatever. So in that sense, if you're in district, you should see a corporate training member of some kind to come in and ask those
But
questions.
to answer your question, are you blocked? No.
Okay.
You are not blocked.
Okay.
There's obviously a disconnect, but you have not been blocked.
Right. They're not pursuing it, but it's not blocked out.
Right.
Yeah.
Great questions. I learned a bunch.
I have one more question.
So I have one more.
Okay, so if we don't do Chisholm Trail or Autry and the Coca-John Trust doesn't want to pay, does that mean that if I want to send Tucker to Votech, I'm paying $16,000 a year?
Or 18,000.
Plus certification fees, plus transportation? All right, just curious, thank you.
But if he was an adult, it'd be how much, 2,000? Is that what I heard right?
Yeah.
So why is that number?
So Joanna,
Well, that's not.
It's set by the state.
It's set by the
Oh, so
state.
we can draw it
It's not
out.
set by the-
But it's 2,400
that.
because you're out of district, right? Like, we would be.
If we were in the district, it would be
We don't give a
half.
shit at school.
Yeah.
I mean, none.
I don't think the out-of-district numbers and in-district numbers are out in that spot. Is that correct? I don't think we gotta do those numbers.
Yeah, I totally understand.
It changes every year.
Are there any other tax resources that's possible to work out to where it's not a property tax? Because I think that a lot of larger property owners just feel like they're just paying for dozens of renters and people that are in and out. I mean, is there another legal way to do it? I mean, it has to be a property tax.
To be an in-district, that's the only assessment there is.
Call your representatives, call your senators.
Yeah. Once again, not set up by local.
It's like with bonds,
Tech.
like
Yeah.
same thing, it's the landowner, business owner, property owner that pays for the building that we're sitting in. The renter doesn't pay for it.
Has this ever come to vote in the town of Hennessey in the time it's been around?
Yes.
Yes.
It has. Okay. How long ago? I mean, I've been here 7 years, so I know in that time frame it hasn't. Do we know when the last?
I think when
time-
Autry was formed, when.
No, it was since Autry, I'm gonna say in the mid-80s.
Was that recent?
I've heard of it been since then. I know when
Yeah.
I graduated, we were members of a
We were when I graduated in
I don't think you were members, I think they were paying out of district,
Yes.
because you would have had to vote to get out of district.
Yeah.
And there's never been a vote to withdraw.
We've
There's
never
never
been
been.
in.
There was an agreement back then that the administration had with Audrey Tech, because the Hennessy's never been part of the district. Because once you're in, you'd have had to vote to get out.
And Audrey Tech's never had a K-12 district be annexed.
So it would have been just the same agreement years ago, but
Many of
And
the
also
community
it
that
was
has gone over the years, in the 70s and 80s, the tuition was $900. And a lot of students believed that the school was paying for that, and it was, it was getting paid. It was just a minimal, it wasn't in-district community funded.
when was Chisholm Trail started?
It formed in '87 and
So,
moved in the new building in 1990.
yeah, so see, that wouldn't even been an option in the late 80s, so that's why everybody automatically went to Audrey.
We're one of the original 5 tech centers in the state of Oklahoma, so we opened our doors in '67.
Would it not be feasible to pursue the Coca-Cola Trust and see what is available to keep sending students and kind of gauge that and gauge what the future enrollments are, and then possibly look at going in rather than, I mean, is it, I may be misunderstanding, but does there need to be a vote right away to go into district or not? Can that be done at any time? Chris is
By the
shaking his
time-
head.
Well,
So
it's
if we
because we've
pass-
been going on this for 4 years now, and it's kind of like time to make something happen or
And
quit.
enrollment is.
I
And
mean,
the
he's got this
timeline-
special deal for us, and it ain't.
The timeline calls.
Right, well, yes.
The timeline is our students starting in the fall, starting their certification, whatever program. And that's why we've had these meetings trying to, okay, when does it need to come to a vote of the people if it, so that we can get students in the fall semester?
And does the school board decide which district to put before the people, or will that be part of the people's vote to decide either Chisholm, Autry, or none?
That would be just through community feedback, the board making that decision.
The board
whether-
would
during the-
decide
During the
which-
resolution, yes.
Okay.
If the board does say yes to moving forward, does a career tech help with town halls? Does a career tech come and talk to
Career Tech
the members?
Career Tech cannot openly support what you guys vote on.
They can do just
We
what they're
can't
doing
even,
here.
we can't even print paper.
But the guy that came with the state, he said that they fund the voting, right? And then he would also market, like flyers. He had said that he would
We
provide.
would pay for the election. If he said he funded that, I didn't catch that
I
part
thought
of it.
that's what he said, is that
I
they,
think he provided resources.
He provided us with resources, but any local expenses, any expense on election would be on us, just like a school board election or
We cannot, Career Techs cannot promote.
They can, all they can do, once, if we call a election resolution, is the same thing they're doing here. Come here and just give facts.
Do you have a total amount for 2022, let's say, how many dollars we're talking out of the entire community to each of these? Is it, when you take the 15 mil times all the tax rates? Yeah, what's the
To
total?
Chisholm Trail, it was a little over $1 million, and to Autry Tech, it was just right at 1.3 million.
What does the ag program cost the school?
What do you mean?
What the
Total expenses,
Yeah.
or just his salary, or?
No, like the total, like if you take the ag program and just, do you have any idea
You had
of
to
what
build
that
it from
program
start.
costs to implement?
Well, they offset it so much with their own fundraising and career tech incentives, but that's a $75,000 program, easy.
So if we dumped $1 million out of the community a year into that ag program and added carpentry, added a couple of those. I'm just curious, it's just a logical question.
We just need the check, that's all we need, Carl, we just need the check.
Yeah.
Someone to provide that check.
Yeah.
Well, it's coming out of the taxes regardless.
I know, but it
My
has to
question
come
is,
out if we don't vote it in.
you know what?
You don't have those dollars unless you make that vote. Those dollars aren't, it doesn't work like that. It would be nice if we had these dollars that we could say, you know what? We're gonna take 1 million, we're gonna just put it right back here in Hennessy, but that's not the way it works.
Right, but if we,
I had asked
Yep.
Mr. Lockwood when he came, can we run an election that would say, okay, instead of a 12 mil increase or 15 mil increase, can we just do a $4 million increase? Because we only need to generate $300,000 and we want to start our own program.
Right.
Of 2 or 3, whatever we identify as community, our top 2 or 3. And you cannot do that.
You can't do it.
You cannot do that.
Not through the career tech.
Not through the career tech.
Okay.
And so, and once again, that goes back to my, right now, money is good. We could start a program and we could spare an extra 100, 200,000. But when gross production dries up, which it eventually will, state aid funding will change. There's gonna be a time where it's not as good in Kingfisher County. That program would be.
So it has to be a new, we can't pass a smaller increase in order, unless it's a separate entity, like it's gotta be its own, it's gotta be a career tech.
But
It can't be part of the school.
But the 1.3 or the 1.04, whatever it is, if you look at the value that you would get from either school, you can't build what either school has for that amount of money for a long period of time.
Right, for as diversified as it is.
Correct. So,
Yeah.
so yes, it's a lot of money, but what you're getting for that amount of money is a lot more than what you're putting into it as a community.
Well, there were, 20 years ago at Hennessey joined back when the valuations skyrocketed like what they have. The career tech would have been collecting, what, 400,000 a year? And we could have been doing the same thing. So that's just a situation of us being very fortunate as a county for high valuations.
Yeah.
Which is the largest increase, the increase of that over the last few years is going to be, windmills.
Well, I wasn't asking for the school to pay for it out of pocket. That's not what I was asking. I'm just asking as a comparison.
Yeah.
We're gonna take in one pot, we're gonna give this money no matter what. Are there other options? And not to say that you guys' options aren't the best. It's just a question to me is, are there other options that make more sense?
But that pot doesn't happen without this vote. That money's not there at all without this vote happening. That's only for career tech. That's the
But the
difference.
question is, how do you do this? I don't think anyone questions the value of career tech and the programs that they have, the welding, the nursing, etc. But how do you do it the most economical? I think that's what Carl's
more or less.
Yeah. Is how do you do it the most economical? So if we vote 1 million, 1.3 million, and then you have 5 students the next year, that gets really expensive.
Yeah. Especially when there's a flat rate.
But you're still helping other things than just high school students. So it's not just that one thing.
There would be a large amount of students that went.
I think we would never have 5. I don't think we'll ever have 10 again. I think there'll consistently be at least 20, if not more, students involved every semester in career tech. We have, like I said, if the limitations in transportation hadn't been an issue and we could do afternoon sessions as well as the morning sessions, that number wouldn't have dropped off the way it did this year. If we were to join an in-district and had the transportation from Chisholm Trail, or we're getting reimbursed from Autry, I think it would be, because we'd be able to do morning and afternoon, I think we'd have a lot more participation. I also can't speak for former administration or former, basically how it's been pushed at the school for kids to do career tech, but I can tell you, I've talked to probably just personally in my office about 60 to 70 students and I say in my office or in the hall, about their interests, and we've got a lot of kids that are interested in career tech and going that route.
So what was the transportation problem this year?
Well, honestly, I don't particularly know. That'd be a question for Mr. Beeman. There was not an available driver. I think with our route buses in the afternoon, we were going to be out that bus or something, and we needed it for our routes after school got out for that afternoon.
So we're supplying transportation right now?
Yes, for Chisholm.
We're out of district.
Because we're out of district?
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner, you were at Newkirk previously.
Yes.
It's equivalent student body-wise,
Yeah,
right?
basically, yeah.
I know you were in the band role before. Do you know how many students by any chance went to
Pioneer Tech? No, I could find out, but I
was just curious if you
I know that there was a lot, and there was a lot of kids, I had a lot of kids in band that were in Pioneer Tech, or that would go to Pioneer Tech in the afternoons, and I know there were a lot. I would say at least probably 40. But I would have to
forever,
yeah.
that community sent people there for a long time.
Yeah, so it's been something they've been doing.
So it's
for
different
forever.
if it's in,
Yeah.
in for a long time compared to brand new, I'm interested.
Yeah.
Kate had asked earlier, and I think it's a good idea, is there a way we can poll the community and find out who's used the career tags? What adults and businesses would like to use their career tags? And kind of get a better idea of what the adult need is in the community.
Where does that stem from? Does it stem from the school board? Does it stem from community? Where would that survey come from? To the community?
Jack, I threw out all about
Jack?
I mean,
All
I'll
about
do it.
Hennessey, there we go.
I know how to do it, but.
Yeah, I'll be all about, if someone wants to put together what they want to ask, I'm all about it. But I would need your help to spread it, because if we put a survey out there, it was lay there. But if everyone got actively involved in sharing and commenting, we'd get thousands and thousands of comments from it. So it's a two-way street. I'll create it and get it out, but we would need some participation to push it.
Is a high school diploma or GED required to do career tech for adults?
Is it required? We have a GED program, and so we get those students in that, get their GED, and get them in a place.
But if an adult wants to do one of your programs and they do not have a high school degree or a GED, do they have to get that first
They
before
need
they're
to
eligible?
get their GED.
Okay.
I didn't know if you had any programs that did it.
Yeah, and that's why we
So
provided.
they would go to the GED?
And we have partnerships in Enid that help support students get their GED.
We have it spread in Macon County, Blaine County, Kingfisher County. Some's during the week and some's on weekend.
So on the Chisholm Trail, if our community participates, how many schools do you have?
We have Lamega, Watonga, Kingfisher, and Dover.
Okay, and that money, the money from the communities versus government money, that you guys get some grant money, I'm assuming, from federal also, or is it all, is the whole school?
There's a lot of federal money out there on this
Yeah.
COVID-19 that's flooded the district.
So if you add another school for long-term, like our district, will you be able to add programs?
We add more programs. That's why if you go to Francis Tuttle versus Autry, they're gonna have a plethora of
Yeah.
programs, okay? It's gonna get a little smaller, and you get smaller tech centers, you're gonna have smaller programs. So
you would be able
you add
to,
more programs.
you should be able to add more programs if all the schools stay in.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, you continue, and whether it's a satellite campus, where you're diversifying some of your programs throughout the county.
Right.
Has Chisholm Trail added programs recently? This is me.
We added a welding program, we put in cosmetology, pre-engineering. The last program we put in was welding.
When did that happen? What year did that happen?
Oh, maybe 5 years ago?
Yeah,
Maybe 5 years ago.
4 or 5. That was around the time.
How long have you had you have a cabinetry program, how long have you had that?
They've had that for years. It was dropped, and then I started it back 14 years ago.
So, I know your attendance is pretty low on it. I mean, they toured our shop, so I saw the attendance.
We have a gentleman, retired,
Yeah.
who's a perfectionist, an incredible craftsman. And he works a half a day, and we have really space for 5 students. And so sometimes we'll have 5 students, sometimes we'll have 1 student. It just depends on the enrollment.
So can you keep that, can you keep it going with 1 student? It doesn't matter whether you, okay.
Yeah, we have 1 student, and we don't even think about it because it might make a difference in that 1 student's life.
Right, well, it has.
I don't put a value on it.
Yeah, it definitely has, so it's been worth it.
Because if you had programs and your student population's not growing, all you're doing is thinning the numbers that's coming to your tech center. And so that's what generates, when you have more schools, generates more programs.
I think the first time I met with Hennessey, We had about 670 vacancies. We're up to 800 now due to growth of programs and expansion of programs.
You mean seats, not vacancies? Because there were 600 seats.
They're vacant January 1.
Right, that's true. What new programs has Autry added?
We've added 6 different ones. We have CNC, diesel technology, a new culinary program. We have industrial and mechanical technology, and then we've taken a business entrepreneur class, evaluated the placement in it, the curriculum in it, and split it into 2. So that's where we got the 6 total. It's a great example of not seeing that direct line of success, and it needed evaluated, and so that curriculum got updated. So technically 6 new programs in the last year.
And you're opening a new makerspace also, right?
That our McCullough Lab is open, that's open to the public. That's not a full-time program, but our full-time programs do get to come and access that and work on projects.
So
Which is like a fab lab.
businesses can rent that space also,
Yes.
right? Is there a difference if in district and out of district?
Yes, there is.
What's the difference?
About double, just like everything else.
Okay.
And that's just an easy way to just do the math. There's not really.
What's our most popular, of the students that have attended Career Tech, what's the most popular one that, program that they went through or completed out of Hennessey?
Most students go to welding.
It looks like health on the board.
I'm blind, I
know
didn't
those
see on
numbers.
there.
The majority of the interest was in the health, was in like health, pre-nursing,
Health.
and then welding. Those were the 2 highest that we had on our survey.
You can speed up, Jesse.
No, I
You
don't
need
want
to
to do
see
that, but I think it's
Zoom.
ready to vote.
Anything else for Mr. Thomas or Ms. Mayberry?
I guess kind of like the poll that you sent to the students, I know we've done community-wide surveys. We did one when we built the event center and whatnot. Now, sometimes it's constructive and sometimes it's a waste of time. Depends on what questions you ask, but we need to get input from the community, and I really appreciate those that came today. We're not going to proceed unless we have direction from the community, even to call Career Tech to guide us through this and bring it to a vote. We need to find out well before then where our community stands and all the information that we can get from our students that are touring, as well as a community-wide survey. Please formulate something and get that information to our community so we can learn what direction our community wants us to guide them through.
So would there be 2 votes or just one? Would the school board decide on which Career Tech and then there'd be one vote by the public, whether we go district or in district? Is that how that works? Or a community have any say on?
Which one?
The community will have a say on which one, yes.
After it's voted to be district or in district, or not,
It would need to be before, but that wouldn't be a vote at like a true election ballot. That would be a survey vote,
Just a
however
survey.
however locally we decided to collect the opinions.
But the election or the,
And then the resolution would be the
Okay.
vote to join.
To join Autry or to join Chisholm Trail.
to become an in district?
Based on what the feedback we got from the community.
Voting yes or no, basically, to become in district.
First, we
Okay.
just need to know if we're gonna do it at all. It doesn't matter which one. We need to do it, yes, you're gonna vote for this, or yes, you're not, or no, you're not. Either one,
Mhm.
right? Are you gonna spend the money for either one? It doesn't matter which one, even
Part
the
of the reason
cheapest
for
one,
these
are you
meetings
gonna do
is
it?
to gauge,
Yeah,
the
that's really all
community
Jack needs to do is yes or no. Are you gonna vote to raise your taxes or not?
This is the best turnout I've seen for every Career Tech meeting.
Well,
I've been
I think we
here,
need to know too, whether you anticipate children of your own utilizing these resources or yourself utilizing these resources as an adult or your business, how would it affect you if we were, that kind of thing too. I think those are probably valuable
But I'm not
questions.
gonna vote yes or no based on what you're gonna do, you know what I mean? So
Well,
really,
it
it's
might
just a yes or no.
influence my vote if, only 2 people vote that they would take classes as an adult versus if,
Yeah, but
1,000 people
I
serve.
think these farmers that own tons
It
of
does.
land.
Where the question's gonna
Joanna,
be.
you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Not to interrupt, it sounds like you're a survey committee for me.
The chairman and the vice chairman already.
This is a great discussion.
The
and
more
I think
information we have
let-
that we can
and
gather.
let's say, on a serious note, let's do something like that where we can get, because that's great discussion points, and there needs to be other input on forming that survey.
I mean, the large landowners are gonna vote yes or no, no matter who's gonna do it, no matter what the numbers are. It's yes or no for them, it's black or white, I feel like. Am I wrong?
I think the only
I got your mind made up already? Okay, right.
I think,
That helps.
are you asking the school board to say, yes, we're gonna call this to a vote, or no, we're not gonna call
I
this to a
think
vote?
initially, before you guys do that.
Well, the only problem, yeah, and just a respectful comment to that, I think the only problem with that is, we've got a almost $400,000 difference between the two Autry techs. So a millage, I believe it was three mills difference between the two. So if we say as a school board, well, we're gonna do it no matter what, whatever you tell us to do, I think that's a mistake by the school board. So first, we need to figure out how many adults are interested in this program, how many students are interested in this programs. That way we can make a calculated decision based on which one we think we need to join, and then call that to a vote.
But I think what you're saying is, as far as the survey, instead of going into depth with the survey, it
Oh,
should
you're
be
saying
yes
you
or
think it's a waste
no.
of time to do
Well,
this?
just do a survey that simply says, will you vote for it, yes or no?
Are you open to it at all?
There's a lot more than just
Or is
that.
your mind already made up that I'm not gonna raise my taxes, no matter how many kids are gonna do it?
Yeah, so
At
like,
least we can make them feel bad.
you know, if you put that out there and 90% of the community says, no, they're not gonna vote for it, there's really no sense
They're
in
on Facebook.
further
It
yes or
doesn't
no.
matter, it doesn't matter.
There has to be some background before you lay it out as a yes or a no.
Yeah, how the questions are, is if yes or no, you're absolutely right. You know,
They have before.
with proper, you know, how it's worded, that's up to you two that are spearheading this committee to develop the different questions. It doesn't have to just be
As
one.
far as trying to get those answers, I think what you need to know is that we are on a timeline in order to get everything through the process to get the ballot or an election for, what did we say, June? Towards the end of June, in order to be able to get everything approved.
For them to get into the school next fall.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a possibility the next time, I mean,
I
that's
don't
still
have
a
that
thing.
paper in front of me, but the paper that Mr. Lockwood gave us, I think April was the latest. We would need to have a resolution locally, because we have, their board then has to approve it, and then it has to go to the state board. So the two other boards after us, and then depending on when their meetings are, and that would be our last chance to call a resolution for a June meeting. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I have March
Is
or
that what you
April.
have?
Yeah, I have March or April.
Okay.
So students wouldn't start until fall of 2023?
Well,
Depending on when that goes through.
yeah,
If we follow that
that would be
timeline?
the next discussion, because technically we'd be in district, but they wouldn't be receiving tax money, correct? So we'd have to work out
Yeah, would it be
something
a-
of, are they gonna charge us in district, tuition out of district? I don't,
Until
I mean,
before,
that
okay.
would have to be a discussion with them, but.
Normally, if it's approved, then the districts, you start enrollment and you get them in those programs immediately. You don't worry about the tax dollars, everyone in the county wants to collect those taxes and send them in.
And to reiterate, our agreement that, with Chisholm Trail and Hennessey Schools, that is providing the 10% rate, it ends at the end of this semester, or with any students that have yet to complete.
We gave that extra year for that, was that completion year?
Right.
Okay, so it ends in June, or June, May 30th, or what it is. It ends at that time. If it's voted on, whether it's Autry or Chisholm Trail, then that would reside, those kids would go according to you guys' decision.
But if nothing is done and the vote gets pushed back, if any students want to go to Chisholm Trail or to Autry next fall, and we still haven't had the vote, it's full tuition at that point. Full out of district tuition.
Yes, sir.
Who made this
Like,
decision?
aren't all the powers of the state?
Is the vote to approve or disapprove of a proposition, would it be, is it 50% plus one? Or what is?
That is correct. It is not a super majority like a 50% plus one.
It's crazy that there would be the voice, which is the bonds.
I just got the text.
If I start talking, there's gonna be a lot more questions.
Everybody's
Just give us a
everybody's
second.
looking for a message on their phone. I just got a text, sir.
Thanks for telling us tonight, though, and not
Cement, cement's gonna be calling.
Is everybody done with Mr. Thomas, Ms. Mayberry? Thank you guys so much. for
Thank you.
taking a couple hours of your evening. Very informative. Thank you guys.
Good to see you.
Well, on a closing, if anybody has any questions that come up that you have for me, contact me on email or phone number. Joanna, you want to spearhead that survey committee? It's a committee, so.
It'll be done on the phone.
I mean, I'll do whatever.
Any questions for individually? They can't answer collectively as a board, but board members, do you guys have anything that we possibly left out that has mentioned before you want to share with them? Or?
One thing was how this would affect our ability for future bonding needs of the school district. And I don't think that this impacts that bonding.
It does not affect your bonding capacity. That is correct.
And I had sent to Jason, because I missed the last meeting because I was sick, but I had asked him, do you foresee like a bond issue like in the near future? Because I feel like if we do vote this in as a community, if a couple years a bond issue does come up, it's more than likely not going to get passed. They're not going to want another increase. So that was something I had asked him, and he had told me you don't foresee anything right now, but that's not to say it could come up.
We're not seeing anything right now. No. She is correct. That's exactly what I said. Right.
But that was a hesitation for me as far as.
Well, for me too. And I've had that conversation individually with board members because it does. People remember that. And I know my grandfather served on the Burlington Board of Ed for like 30 years. And was very proud of the fact that they would not pass a bond issue because he was a landowner. And I get it. I mean, so I'm very cautious.
I agree with you. I think that it would strongly discourage the taxpayers' desire to help us with future bond issues with facility or whatever it may be. As far as Mr. Sternberger's comment, I agree with him. I don't foresee anything, but this is an ever-changing program. It's an ever-changing process. We never know what's going to change, and we can't be closed-minded enough to say that, hey, in 2 years there won't be something that we foresee benefits the entire student body, not just 10% or 20%.
And I will say this, because it was talked about at last meeting. I had mentioned 3 or 4 different projects that if you lumped them all together, that was by no means to plant a seed of, oh, he's going to come at us in a couple of years with a bond issue. The intent of that was to show that we have $675,000 in our building fund. Everything that people are requesting is over that. And, so I'm basically telling everybody no, or you got to do a lease purchase, which is not a good option because you're paying interest as a school, or you're going to the very people we're talking about right now and passing a bond issue. So that was not an attempt to throw that in and, oh, here he's going to come in with this in a couple of years. I was just trying to say we got to let our coffers get full at a local level before we can build some of those things.
Yeah, and like I had mentioned to you, I figured a school would probably be, like an actual school building would probably be the next thing. Because as far as like ECC is completely full, elementary does not have an open classroom. I do not think middle school has an open, I'm not for sure about high school.
And in a non-formal conversation, not in anything with board, me being new, that is the only thing I've heard that was a possible idea once we got closer to the dome being paid off to transition if we needed a high school or new facilities at that time.
But that's not a new,
But that's
a continuation of that.
But that was the only thing that was even possibly discussed as you know, hey, this is it. But that wasn't even part of the 5-year plan, 10-year plan. That was just 2 or 3 people said, well, it would be nice, that type of deal. It was that informal. So, because as a board, they have not talked to me about anything.
Yeah, that's a concern I've had also as far as, you know, what would be the next thing, and I think the building and whatever, junior high or whatever we need. But I agree, I don't think that we would want to vote for a bond if we pass this. A lot of things to think about.
Can we just do like a sample vote right here, like who would vote yes?
Yeah, let's do it, Joanne.
Yeah, honestly, I'm serious, I'm curious. I mean, this is a sample of our community, is it not? Sure.
But we don't have all the information yet, because I think you were gonna do some checking with the foundation to see the what
At
ifs.
their next meeting with Sanders.
I mean, I can tell you that the 18,000 is not feasible for the foundation. I mean, there's no way that we could cover that.
Sustainability to that.
No.
But the part that's hard to understand is, so as soon as you get out of high school, then that rate drops to 2,000 or 2,200, whatever.
Yeah, and speaking on that, like, the foundation does offer a scholarship, and so.
For after you graduate, you can apply for that and probably get that paid for.
Yes, and so we.
But you won't at your age.
No, just high school young students. But we awarded every scholarship that was applied this year. And I mean, we foresee being able to do that for a while. But his scholarship, or his foundation, or his trust is a percentage. So, I mean, as we spend that, it's gonna go down.
I understand how it works.
But for somebody that graduates, for the first 3 years after they graduate, they can decide to go and join and get in one of the programs in district as a high school student and not have to pay any tuition. They get the full benefits of a high school student for the first 3 years after they graduate.
But the thing that's hard to process is how the percentages of being a high school student versus being a graduate, the 18,000 versus the 2,000.
Well, that's what Max said, it makes no
It
sense.
makes no sense, and I don't know where that was developed at, through the state level? Is that
It was state level,
mandated?
yeah, it's not local.
So, but to further your education, I'm not trying to argue with you, but to
No,
further your
no.
education, $2,000 is pretty cheap once you get out versus that's 18,000 for your 2 years.
Is it possible that that number that you're hearing, when you're in district, it's not that number actual cost for those students? I mean, that number is the out-of-district cost for someone in high school to come to a career tech.
Yes.
For an in-district school, that's not what the taxes are necessarily only paying for. I mean, those taxes help the adults' costs go down because of those taxes. So yes, like that, the number you're hearing is just out of district. That's not the in-district amount that's going towards the school district and the community in a benefit sense at all. That's how I see it. I mean, there's a lot more to it than the out-of-district cost that everyone's averaging by the 20 or 30 kids.
How many manufacturers here in Hennessey, how many businesses are currently receiving, obviously you know a lot from just listening.
I have in the past.
I know that you know a lot just by listening to you.
Right.
So how many businesses currently benefit from Autry Tech?
So my current job is technically different. As a safety trainer, and I'm just speaking on safety, OSHA terms, I don't know an exact number, but I would say a good 60 to 70% of companies were touched by safety training because of OSHA standards from either Autry or even Chisholm Trail. And you know they are paying double the cost.
Well, you say 60 to 70%, how many?
I mean, to be honest, at the time I was a safety trainer, it was a lot of oil field. I mean, this was 6, 7 years ago. Of the ones that I saw in Hennessey, I went to a lot of companies around here. As a safety trainer, I didn't see those numbers. I just remember, because I lived here, you know, it was easier for me to actually go to those companies. So for me, I went to a lot of oil field companies teaching forklift safety, teaching ladder safety, teaching whatever OSHA required in that sense. So I don't know the exact number. I can find out back then, you know, what it was. But I remember being here quite often doing those safety trainings at many different companies.
We didn't all but beg Autry for recruits over the years to get, I think I had one in 18 years.
I'm
And
sorry.
I'm not picking on you,
No,
because you're
I've been
not
there
in the
10
system.
years.
You're not in the system.
I mean, I've been there 10 years.
Because
so-
I finally was just like, I'm done with these people. I'm not, and I know all the instructors now, and you know, it's.
How to save people's time.
If he's recording, this might be a problem.
I don't want to stop anybody.
I would talk to you after.
No more redundancy, I think we can all agree on that. Any new information or comments? Anything anybody want to task me with besides the survey?
So, sorry, Jason. I am a parent. I have a couple kids in the system. I care about it. Yes, I am an Autry employee, but I have a freshman and a junior in the system, and they've been here since 3rd and 5th grade. You know, I mean, I'm a bus driver. You know, I've bussed football teams. I help quite a bit in this community. So yes, I have the tie. I've been there 10 years. Blah blah blah. I had the opportunity as a high school kid. I would love for my children, which I know they have the opportunity after high school, but I would love them to do it during high school to actually have that chance. So as a parent, that's where I'm coming from.
So he answers your poll
And a
question.
taxpayer, that is where I'm coming from.
I think you got your easiest one.
As a parent, that's all. And honestly, I don't care if it's Chisholm Trail or Autry. I just want them to have the opportunity to go to a career tech system to further, I mean, to be honest, I have a master's degree. I don't care if my kids go to college. I want, like my son wants to be, his family owns a restaurant, you know, and he would love to do that. My daughter wants to go to Cosmo. I'm cool with them never going to college. But I want them to have the opportunity for that purpose. Again, I know they would, but this is a chance for the community to invest in our children. You know, is Hennessey growing or is it staying stagnant? You know, a lot of the people in this room have younger kids or kids, you know, throughout the system. I feel like I agree with David Tillman. You know, this is an investment for the future for the town of Hennessey, not necessarily just the students.
I have one more question then, kind of along that line. Has the school talked about, I mean, I've watched the board meetings and things, I know, but if this is voted no, what are we gonna do to help our kids? You know, can we implement some new programs? Do more job shadowing or that kind of thing?
Just raw dollars, and not that it's really been discussed, but if you just look at, if we sent 25 students to Autry or Chisholm Trail, it would be roughly $450,000 to $500,000 at out of district cost. So, you know, if we were to Hennessey Schools continuing to foot that bill, and we would have to pull $500,000 out of our general fund to fund 25 students, 30 students to go to Autry or Chisholm Trail. Is that an option? You know, that's $500,000 out of our budget that we're not spending right now to do that. Is there organizations? Is there funding from outside? We've mentioned the Coca-John Trust. Is there people that have made lots of money that would love to donate $500,000 a year to the school for this purpose? We'd love to visit with you about that. If you have that opportunity, we'd love to offer scholarships, even half that, and then the school would have a $200,000 or a $250,000 bill to send students out of district. But that's also limiting it to 25 or 30 students. All options have to be considered. What the community wants us to do, progressing. If we take it to a vote and it's a yes vote, then we proceed that way. If it's a no vote, then we have to look at the other options. And one is we don't send any students to career tech, that they have to do all that on their own.
But it will send a message to the community and the students if it's a no vote as a community. It just will.
I agree.
And to your, you asked if we had talked about, broadly, we have wondered, or could we develop some programs and maintain them? And of course, the problem with that is what programs, because you may offer 2 programs, and if they're not cosmetology, nursing, or maybe welding, which we already have a welding opportunity, you know, through VOAG, but you know, are we going to reach enough kids to try to, you know, develop some program from scratch? And that's That's real hard.
Well, and doing it without any additional funds.
Yeah, no additional funds. We're already talking about limited space in some of our buildings.
Yeah.
You know, we already have a list of potential projects that we could, address, so there's just not a cheap resolution to it.
You buy the equipment for, say, cosmetology, and you get a large interest for 2 years, and then after that, it drops off to nothing, and then, what do? You got all that stuff, all that equipment you just paid for.
So you understand the plight of the taxpayers then?
Yeah.
By that comment? Because you could have the same decrease in interest in VOTEC itself.
We definitely need the more programs that Autry provides than Chisholm Trail. As much as I think Chisholm Trail I like them better. They've been better to our community than Autry. But they have more, they've had more.
I'm just messing with you, man, it's fine.
We'll see you after. All right, we have more. We need plumbers, we need electricians, we need, carpenters. If we don't do something in this community about getting these people into some sort of trade, you're going to be paying attorneys prices, $250 an hour for a plumber.
For traveling up here for whatever the reason.
Just
I
wait.
agree with you, Carl. 100%. That's
I know it from firsthand experience.
Right now. See what you get.
And my competition just stays right down here as long as we stay in that position. And the price just keeps going up because there's nobody to recruit. There's nobody that wants to do it. So
what Carl's saying is if you want his prices to keep going up.
you better believe it. And
I mean, hey,
I'm on both sides of the deal. I'm a property owner and I'm for it, but the amount of money it's costing is, it's just, my gosh.
Or the amount of money that it's going to take from a school system to come up under the program. It's going to have to come from somewhere in some form or fashion. So, y'all know where my vote is.
But the nice thing is it does go to public vote after this, whatever the school board does, we still public vote on, correct? Do I have that interpreted right? So there's not really a whole lot of need for a survey.
Oh, no, you don't get to leave. Oh, no. We're all in this.
All right, here's my 2 cents. Here's my 2 cents, and this is God honest truth. And I kind of have a non-biased opinion because I don't even live in Hennessey. So I'm not going to be paying this money.
You already are.
You're getting paid by it.
Oh, yeah.
Where you live, you're already paying this.
Oh, I know, believe me, I know. Yeah, I got a rude awakening being a rookie homeowner on that one. From a welding standpoint, and I'm not talking from any other standpoint, from a welding standpoint, I have talked to a former ag teacher that is now a career tech welding instructor. There is nothing that he had to do just tremendously extra to become a welding instructor. He taught those kids how to weld. They brought a welding inspector to come in and inspect those welds. That's how they passed that certification. I bluntly asked them, do you have any career partners or anything like that where you place those kids or help place those kids into a career, into a job? He said no, okay? I also just visited with the pipeliner. He does this for a living. He went to Meridian Tech in Stillwater, got his 6G certification, which is the highest certification in welding you can possibly do, in 5 months. Usually it takes about 2 years. 5 months, he was experienced, he was in and out, went out into the field. He still started off as a welder's helper, and a welder's helper does not require certification. He knows, and so in every pipeline company that he goes and works for, he still has to retest. So the value of that certification is in the is really up to the employer that's doing the hiring. And that's why I am not against career tech. I think it is a great thing. But I tell my students, if that's what you want to do, make sure that's going to benefit you. Don't walk out of there with the certification thinking, hey, I got this certification, I'm going to go get this job. No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry, it doesn't. Now, for other things, it might, nursing, all of that, it might. But from my standpoint, that employer might look at that certification and say, that's cute. You still have to go take ours. You still have to retest. You still have to do this for us. Now, the training that they get out of that, can't deny that. Absolutely cannot deny the training. I can tell you from my experience, my former students that have left my program to go to VOTEC, at least probably, I would say we're in the 80 percentile, have come back because they didn't want to get out of bed early, they didn't like their instructor, or they decided it's not what I want to do.
And that goes
So,
back
How many
to
kids are in
accountability. If we spend $1 million a year to send these kids up there, who are they accountable to? Is what I'd like to know. And it's like you all said,
that was the question that I
who are
asked.
they accountable to here? But they get up there and, well, thank you taxpayers, you just spent all this money to send me up here, but I don't really want to get up this early, and I really don't like my teacher, so I'm just gonna stay home.
So, and I'll say this too, and this pipeliner had bluntly told me today too, while I was on the phone before I came here. He had a welder's helper that came in from Colorado that had been a welder's helper forever, started welding, he knew how to weld, and finally, one day, there was an inspector there, and he's like, hey, yeah, I want to try to certify me. He got certified on the job, on the spot, boom, done, no training required from a VOTEC. So now I'm just saying that from my standpoint, from what I'm seeing with my students and the fields that my students are going for. So back several years ago when I first got here, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, however long it was, there was a lot of welding interest. So I started writing up grants, started getting new welders, new equipment in, okay? Well, that interest kind of changed. Now I'm starting to have more kids that kind of want to just do a little bit of everything that we have in the shop. I would say, at least 85 to 90% of my students that come in and say, hey, I want to weld, I want to do this, slowly but surely get interested in more things that we do in the shop because they're exposed to it. So here they are, hey, I want to weld, and now, hey, I'm powder coating, I'm using a computer to design on plasma cam, I want to do that now. I don't want to weld. So it varies. So my experience with my students is that. I mean, it's just, to me, it's kind of black and white when it comes to things like that. Jack?
I want to throw this out in closing.
What the heck?
I tried to leave. I tried to get the ball rolling.
I said you're in this, I didn't say stop.
You said you ain't leaving.
All right, let me throw this out as an alternative. A big part of my career has been running capital campaigns or building foundations. And I think over the last 15 years, we've raised about $280 million for a capital campaign for specific items. So say Hennessey wanted to build a 4-unit training center. Okay, it was just a building that you could make into 4 different things. You needed $8 million to do that. You set up a capital campaign, you go out and solicit, and you proceed gaining the funds for that. A lot of the times when we did a capital campaign, it had a foundation attached to it that would fund it, you know, to keep it going for maintenance or additional equipment, things like that. Or Hennessey does have a community foundation. And if you develop a plan and then start marketing that plan, there's probably money there that is not being tapped that could be used to fund this. So now you not only have the Coca-John Foundation, you got another one that could be used to build something that we actually own. And then you just have to build it carefully. Like George was saying, you know, it's got to be flexible. You know, I'm thinking in an advanced carpentry class. You know, metalworking was a big thing when I was in school, and then of course, you know, all of the things that ag can offer.
Well, auto mechanic is a popular career tech field, and you know what auto mechanic will look like in 10 years with electric vehicles.
The cars are going to be flying.
It's going to be
by then,
completely
yeah.
different than what it would be trained at now, but there would be a lot of.
Totally different now than it was
So there
Was it
are
you
more
without a doubt?
options. I just don't want to get stuck on the tax. There are other options if we're serious about this that we could look into.
Now, a capital fund, provided by Coca John Fund or Hennessey United or whatever it might be, is that, in your experience, is that ever done with the school? Because schools get funded by community bond elections.
Right.
That's but in this, circumventing the taxation, but doing it on a capital funds campaign.
Yes.
Have you experienced it with schools?
Yeah, we did it with several school systems
Okay.
in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
where it was on school property, and the school operated it, but it had some kind of ownership thing that you had to jiggle.
And a Pennsylvania state law and an Oklahoma state law, I wonder if there would be anything that would prevent it from being able to be done in Oklahoma. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that, but that would take some research to find
Right,
out.
but all avenues of funding this need to be explored,
Sure.
you know.
And it may not even be feasible, but I just wanted to throw that out.
Well, my biggest thing was making sure that the companies, because the whole purpose in career tech is to bring workers back to the community, right? We want people to come back to Hennessey, keep Hennessey thriving. But I think in terms of sending out a survey to everybody in general, I also think you need to survey your business owners to see what type of certifications they are requiring. And if that's something that, if, for instance, what he's saying, if it's nothing that they're gonna get at Autry Tech, well, then they have to take their certification at their employer. Then those are the types of things that I feel like people really need to know about and our students really need to know about. So I would probably start with that, with surveying the company or our businesses here in Hennessey, just to kind of see what's out there, what's needed.
I mean, regardless of any certification, everyone knows hands-on training and actually in that position is way more important.
Well,
It is, but again, the certification is what you have to
So
get
in
to
saying
do your
that
job.
also, and talking to the pipeliner, he got his certification. He said, I walked out of there, I thought I was hot stuff, and I wasn't nearly as ready. I didn't learn what I needed to learn for that field until I actually got into the field.
So I'll say, even if you go to college with a bachelor's degree, you're not gonna walk in and be a manager.
No.
You know?
No,
So,
but
I mean, it's the same thing.
But it's very important to explore what that's required of that job.
Right, correct.
Because that's one thing,
So what-
like,
what should be-
I have a meat science degree and I'm a curriculum consultant.
Right.
Like, it's not.
I
you
get
know,
it.
I totally get it, but making sure that what
You
you're
better
gonna
get this meeting under
receive
control.
is what's gonna benefit you.
Jason Lee?
So he had to go use the restroom.
Yeah, the old, I gotta take this call.
You're exactly right.
But it doesn't mean I can't run any aircraft out there.
Exactly.
First off, you gotta be good enough.
I mean,
Right.
you know?
You can have whatever certification, but if you're not good enough, you're not good enough. So, I mean.
I will, can I just, so we've had both career techs here, I'm not on the board obviously, we've had both schools here, the State Department here, we've had 2 or 3 people show up at every meeting until the night. Like, that's crazy to me.
It's becoming more popular.
I'm just saying, this has been discussed for a long time. Either way, I don't care which side you're on, but come and talk.
I agree.
Not until the last moment, and then it's just all shot. Well, there's a lot more discussion that can and should happen than this one time.
On that note, there being a lot more discussion that needs to happen, I think that we need to go ahead and get out of here.
I tried.
And seriously, you can call my office anytime, you can call Mr. Sternberger's office, you can set up a meeting, you can email me, whatever, if you want more information, if you just have questions, want to know anything, but yeah, I think we've kind of beat this to death for tonight. You're welcome.